They say your brain doesn't finish developing until you're in your 20s. That's probably why I didn't trust my instincts that day, why I smiled instead of screamed, why I followed instead of ran. But I remember everything about that day. The way the sun danced on the water, the grit of sand on my skin, and the way his eyes never blinked. Even now, I still dream about the surf. Only in my dreams. The waves pull me under, and I never come back up. We had driven 6 hours to get to the coast, me and my dad. It was our first vacation since Mom died. I think he wanted to do something special, something normal, something that would force a smile out of me, even if he had to drag it to the surface himself. The beach was nearly empty. It was September, too cold for locals, too early for snowbirds. Just wind, seagulls, and the endless hiss of the waves. We rented a small blue cottage with a rickety porch and sand in every corner. I loved it. I loved how quiet it was, how the silence felt like a clean slate. No casseroles, no awkward condolences. Just the ocean and Dad and me. The second day there, I woke up early. Dad was still asleep, his arm over his eyes, snoring softly. I slipped on my suit, grabbed a towel, and tiptoed down to the beach. The wind tugged at my hair, and the water gleamed silver in the dawn light. That's when I first saw him. He was standing waist deep in the water, facing the horizon. Pale, thin, maybe 10 or 11, around my age at the time. He didn't seem cold, didn't flinch when the wind kicked up and blew sharp mist across his face. He didn't even move. I don't know why I walked toward him. Maybe it was because he looked so still, like he didn't belong there. Maybe it was because I hadn't seen another kid in days and I missed the sound of laughter. But mostly, I think it was the way he turned and smiled. His lips barely moved, but it was a smile. Crooked, like it wasn't used to being there. His eyes were the color of seawater, that sickly, murky green you see when waves churn up the sand. He waved once, then turned and began to walk deeper. I followed. Not immediately. At first, I hesitated. The water was colder than I expected, biting at my ankles like sharp teeth. But he kept looking back, nodding at me like we shared a secret, like we were in on something together. "Don't you want to learn?" he called out. His voice was thin, almost snatched away by the wind. "Learn what?" I asked, wrapping my arms around myself. I was up to my knees now. He didn't answer, just turned and dove under the waves, his body vanishing into the foam. I waited. Maybe 30 seconds passed, maybe more. Long enough that my heart began to pound. Just as I started to back away, he surfaced again, further out now. "Come on," he called. "It's not as deep as it looks." The thing is, he was right. The sandbars stretched far. I waded out, shivering, feet sinking into silt, but never losing footing. He showed me how to float, how to dive without inhaling water. We splashed and laughed, and for the first time since Mom died, I felt normal, light, like I might actually be okay. But then, the sky darkened. Clouds rolled in, sudden and fast, like they'd been waiting just beyond the horizon. The waves picked up, sharp, choppy, angry. I turned to the beach and realized how far out we'd gone. The shore was a smear of gray and sand. My towel was just a tiny dot. "I think we should go back," I said, wiping water from my eyes. He didn't respond, just drifted closer until he was right in front of me. His smile was gone. Something was wrong. I saw it in the way he held himself. Tense, too still. His eyes didn't match his expression. They were wide, blank, watching me, studying. "I never got your name," I said, trying to force a laugh. He blinked. Once. "No, you didn't." A wave smacked into me from the side, knocking me off balance. I coughed, sputtered, and when I looked up, he was even closer, inches from my face. I tried to backpedal, but the undertow caught my legs. I flailed. He reached out and grabbed my wrist. Hard. "Let go," I screamed, twisting, but his grip was like iron. Cold. Not like skin at all. Slick, like wet stone. He pulled me under. The sea swallowed everything. I remember the silence. The utter, crushing silence beneath the water. I kicked, clawed, but he held me fast. His face didn't move. No bubbles rose from his mouth. He stared at me with wide, expressionless eyes. Eyes that no longer looked human. I saw things down there. Shapes in the dark. Long, thin shadows that moved against the current. Eyes blinking in the abyss. Fingers, or tentacles, reaching from pits in the sand. The boy's mouth opened. Wider. Too wide. More than any jaw should open. From it came a sound. Not a scream, not a word. Just a long, gurgling hum, like something ancient waking from sleep. Then light. Hands grabbing me, yanking me upward. My dad. He'd come looking for me. Said he saw something thrashing in the waves. Said I was underwater for almost 2 minutes. Said there was no boy. I screamed. Begged him to believe me. But there were no footprints. No second towel. Just me, and the tide, and an ocean that looked far too calm. I haven't been near the sea in over 15 years. But sometimes, when I shower, I catch the scent of salt in the steam. And once, just once, I swear I saw something small and pale in the drain, like a child's hand, reaching up from the pipes. I turned the faucet off, hold my breath, and listen for the gurgling hum. Because I think he's still waiting, and I think he still wants to teach me. They say you never forget your first real friend. I wish that were true, because I remember every detail about mine, and I'd give anything to forget. His name was Avery, and he nearly killed me. I met Avery when I was 8 years old. He moved into the house 3 doors down, a small green place with a crooked porch and a single dying tree in the yard. I remember the first time I saw him, sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk, drawing something on the concrete with a stick. Not chalk, just dragging wood through dust. He didn't smile when I said hello, didn't even look up, but I liked him instantly. I don't know why. Maybe it was because I'd been lonely for a while. Or maybe it was because he had that quiet, unreadable energy that made you lean in, made you curious. We became friends in that way kids often do suddenly, without question. One day he ignored me. The next, we were digging holes in his backyard, pretending to hunt for pirate gold. But even back then, something about him felt off. He never talked about his parents. I only ever saw his mother once, through a window, standing perfectly still, staring out like a mannequin in a thrift store display. His house always smelled like bleach and burnt toast. And his room was nearly empty, just a mattress on the floor and a book about animal bones on the windowsill. Still, I liked him. He was brave. He dared me to jump from rooftops, sneak into old buildings, light matches we weren't supposed to have. And every time we got caught, he'd smile and say it was his fault. Every time. At the time, I thought that made him a good friend. Now, I think he was collecting. When we turned 12, Avery changed. It wasn't sudden, just little things. He stopped laughing. He began drawing strange symbols on the backs of his notebooks. He started calling me late at night, whispering things he didn't remember the next morning. Once, he said, "There's something in my walls." Another time, "They won't let me sleep anymore." When I asked who they were, he'd just breathe heavy and hang up. I told my mom. She said Avery had always been a bit troubled, that maybe I should spend more time with other kids. But I couldn't. He was my best friend. He'd always had my back. So I kept answering the calls, kept showing up when he asked. And then came the day he asked for a favor. It was late October, windy and dry. The kind of day where dead leaves skitter across the pavement like little brown spiders. Avery called me after school, said he needed help. Said he found something in the woods behind our neighborhood and he didn't want to be alone. I grabbed my coat and biked to meet him. He was waiting at the trailhead. No bike, no flashlight. Just standing there, arms crossed, staring into the trees. "I buried something," he said without looking at me. But I think it came back. I laughed. Asked if he was trying to scare me. He didn't laugh. "You said you'd help," he said, and stepped into the woods. I followed. The forest behind our neighborhood wasn't very big, just a stretch of dead oaks and broken beer bottles. But that day it felt endless. The trees leaned in close, like they were listening. My stomach churned the deeper we went. I told myself it was just the cold. We stopped at a clearing. There was a circle burned into the grass, black and jagged, like something had scorched it from the inside out. In the center, a wooden box. Old, weather-beaten. A lock hung from the front, rusted and snapped. "I locked it," Avery whispered. I swear I did. He dropped to his knees and slowly opened the lid. Inside was nothing. At least, that's what I thought at first. But then I leaned closer and I saw its scratches. Deep ones. Like claws. Or fingernails. And there was hair caught in the corner. Not animal hair. Long human. "What the hell is this?" I asked, backing up. He didn't answer. He just stared into the box. Then he whispered, "It wants something else now." I turned to leave, and that's when I felt it. Something behind me. No sound. No breath. Just pressure. Like the air had thickened into syrup. My legs froze. My lungs squeezed shut. I turned slowly. Nothing. Just trees. But Avery was crying now. Silent tears. And he said, "It's not me it wants anymore." I ran. I didn't wait. I didn't ask. I just bolted. Branches slapped my face. My lungs burned. I hit the trail and pedaled home like the devil was behind me. When I got home, I locked every door, closed every curtain. My heart didn't slow down until morning. The next day, Avery wasn't at school. I called. No answer. I went in his house. Curtains drawn. No movement. I never saw his mother again. That night, I heard tapping on my window. Soft. Rhythmic. Like fingers drumming. But I lived on the second floor. Days passed. Then weeks. No one spoke about Avery. Not the teachers. Not the neighbors. It was like he'd been erased. But I remembered. I couldn't stop remembering. Especially when the dream started. Dark forests. That burned circle. A box with no bottom. And something crawling out of it. Long fingers, empty eyes. Whispers in a voice that sounded like mine. "You owe me." That's all it ever said. "You owe me." A year later, I moved across the country. New school. New state. New life. I tried to let it go. I told myself Avery had just run away. That maybe his family moved in the night. But sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I think I see someone behind me. Just for a second. And last week, just before dawn, I got a phone call. No number. Just static. And then, you said you'd help. Some debts don't forgive. Some favors come back, even when your friends don't. I should have trusted my gut the second I opened the door. He was holding the pizza box with both hands, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. You ever meet someone who's just wrong? That's what this guy was, off in a way I couldn't name, like a mask smiling just a little too wide. But it was a Friday night, and we were starving. So I let him in. I live in a quiet neighborhood outside of Sacramento. Suburban, peaceful, the kind of place where people still wave from their driveways and kids ride bikes until the streetlights hum on. It was me, my wife Claire, and our 3-year-old daughter, Eva. We'd only moved in 3 months earlier, still unpacking, still figuring out where everything goes. That night, it was cold and rainy, and none of us felt like cooking. We ordered from a new pizza place, one of those no-frills, local joints with a blurry online menu and a 5-mile delivery radius. Claire found it on a Facebook group for the neighborhood. Best crust in town, one woman claimed. Fast service and super friendly. I wish I could ask her what her definition of friendly is. Anyway, the guy showed up maybe 30 minutes later. I remember because it was unusually fast. He didn't knock. He rang the doorbell 3 times in quick bursts, like someone jabbing at a buzzer on a game show. I opened the door, and there he was. Mid-40s, maybe older. Thin frame. Greasy black hair that clung to his forehead like spider legs. His uniform looked clean, but his eyes, they didn't. They were pale. Almost cloudy. Like he couldn't quite focus on me. "Hello there," he said, in this high, cheery voice that didn't match his face. "Got your pie." He held out the box like it was a trophy. "Great, thanks," I said, reaching for my wallet. I glanced past him, expecting to see a car running in the driveway, but there was nothing. No vehicle. Just our lawn and the falling rain. He didn't move. Just stood there, arms outstretched, still holding the pizza. "Oh, sorry," I muttered, fumbling with the cash. "Keep the change." He took it with one hand, then paused. "Do you mind if I use your bathroom?" There it was, that subtle flicker in my brain. That instinct that whispered no. I hesitated. Yeah, sure, I guess. I instantly regretted it, but he was already stepping inside. Claire peeked around the hallway, raising an eyebrow. I mouthed, "Delivery guy," and she gave a polite wave before disappearing back into the kitchen. Eva was on the floor with her toys, murmuring little kid nonsense, oblivious. The guy stood in the foyer, dripping rainwater onto the tile. I motioned toward the hallway. Bathroom's down there on the left. But he didn't move. Instead, he turned toward the staircase. "You mind if I use the one upstairs?" he asked. "The one down here is a little tight." I froze. He hadn't seen the downstairs bathroom. He hadn't even looked that direction. Still, I nodded, trying to stay polite. "Yeah, sure. Upstairs, first door on the right." He smiled again. "Thanks. I really appreciate it. You've got a beautiful home." Then he climbed the stairs, slow and heavy, like each step was a choice. I stood there for a moment, uneasy. Then I shook it off, grabbed the pizza, called out to Claire, and we sat down to eat. But the whole time, I kept glancing at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of the toilet, The rush of running water, the creak of him coming back down. Nothing. 10 minutes passed. I stood. I'm gonna check on him. Claire frowned. Maybe he left? No way. I would have heard the front door. I climbed the stairs, every step amplifying my heartbeat. The bathroom door was open. Empty. No one inside. I stepped back into the hallway. Hello? I called. Everything okay? Silence. Then soft footsteps. From Eva's room. My stomach dropped. I moved toward the door and slowly pushed it open. It was dark. The only light came from the hallway behind me, spilling in long slants across the carpet. And there he was, standing in front of Eva's closet, his back to me. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen. Long enough to register that he hadn't noticed me. Or maybe he had, and just didn't care. He reached out and touched the closet door. His fingers moved slowly, like he was tracing something. What the hell are you doing? I finally barked. He flinched, turned, but he didn't look embarrassed or startled. He just smiled again. That same too-wide grin. I heard something, he said calmly. Thought maybe you had rats. I stepped forward. Get out. Now. He didn't argue. Just nodded, walked past me down the hall, and descended the stairs like nothing had happened. I followed, heart pounding. Claire stood up as he reached the door. Everything all right? Your daughter's room is charming, he said softly. That pink lamp? I had one just like it growing up. We didn't have a pink lamp. He walked out before I could say anything else. I locked the door, checked the windows, pulled Eva into our bedroom and let her sleep beside us. I called the pizza place the next day. A teenager answered. No one by that description works here, he said. We don't do deliveries past 9. And we only have 2 drivers, both women. I asked if maybe someone had picked up a shift or was new. Nope, he said. You sure it was our place? I checked the receipt. It had no name, no number, just the word, Hotbox. That pizza joint doesn't exist. Not in Sacramento. Not anywhere I can find. That night, I checked Eva's closet. In the back, behind a stack of books and a stuffed rabbit, I found something. An old pink lamp. Dusty. Frayed cord. The kind with a little pull chain. We'd never seen it before. And when I turned it on, it worked. He said he had one just like it growing up. But I don't think he ever stopped growing. I think he's still looking. Still smiling. Still waiting for someone else to open the door. They say nature is predictable if you know how to read it. But I grew up in those woods. Knew every root, every ridge, every branch. And I still walked into something that shouldn't have been there. And I think a piece of me never made it out. It was the summer of 2009 when me, Dylan, and Marcus found the cave. We were 19, bored, reckless, that golden age where you're too old to be scared and too young to realize why you should be. Our town was the kind of place where nothing ever changed. 1 gas station, 2 bars, and 1,000 acres of untouched woods that wrapped around the edges like a forgotten border. That day, we'd gone out to the escarpment. The cliff trail wasn't well known. No signs. Just a dusty path that led to jagged drops and shallow rock outcroppings that bored kids like us used to crawl around on. We didn't tell anyone where we were going. We never did. Half the thrill was in sneaking into places our parents said were dangerous. And on that day, we found something new. Something that shouldn't have been there. The cave wasn't large, at least not from the outside. It was tucked into the rock face, half hidden by a curtain of moss and earth that looked recently disturbed. Fresh dirt, a strong musty smell, not quite like an animal den. Colder, wetter, like something had been breathing inside. We'd passed this stretch of cliff dozens of times over the years and never once seen it. Has this always been here? Marcus asked, brushing the moss aside. No, Dylan said. We would have noticed it. We should have left then. But we didn't. We grabbed our phones. No flashlights, just screens, and stepped inside. The air changed the second we entered. It was like stepping underwater. Everything went silent. The temperature dropped at least 20 degrees. Our breath fogged out in front of us, even though it was 90 degrees outside. It didn't make sense. The passage was narrow, just wide enough to squeeze through one at a time. It twisted left and right in ways that didn't match the cliff's layout. And the walls, God, the walls were too smooth. Like they'd been polished, but not by time or water. More like worn down by touch, by fingers, by movement. Every now and then, I'd hear a soft sound ahead, like a shuffle or a breath. But every time I raised my phone light, There was nothing, just more rock. We pushed deeper, and the tunnel opened into a chamber. And that's when the real weirdness began. The chamber wasn't natural. It was too round, too symmetrical. And on the floor, dirt, not stone. There were grooves, circling inward like a spiral. Something had been dragged, repeatedly, always toward the center. And at the center, a depression in the earth, perfectly circular, about 4 feet wide. It didn't look like a sinkhole or erosion. It looked like a nest, or a hole. We stared at it for a while. No one spoke. I remember Dylan breaking the silence. "Guys, how long have we been in here?" Marcus checked his phone, then frowned. "It's dead." "Mine too," I said. My screen was black. Wouldn't turn on. No light. No signal. Dylan held his up. "Still working." I got 2:14. "We came in around noon," Marcus said. "Feels like, what, 20 minutes?" But we all knew. We knew it hadn't been 20 minutes. It felt like hours. Our stomachs were growling. My mouth was dry. My arms ached from holding the phone up. We decided to leave. And that's when the lights went out. Dylan's phone blinked off. Just like that. Darkness swallowed us whole. Not normal dark. Not even cave dark. This was oppressive. Heavy. Like it had weight. Like it wanted to hold you there. We screamed. Fumbled. Reached for each other's hands, but found only empty air. That's when the whispers started. Not words. Just murmurs. From the walls. From the hole. All around us. I swear I felt something brush against my leg. Long and thin, like a branch or an arm. It tugged once. Then let go. I ran. I don't remember how I found the tunnel. I don't remember how I found the exit. Just cold air and the sound of Dylan screaming behind me. When we burst into the daylight, it was dusk. We'd gone in at noon. It was 7:32 p.m. The three of us didn't talk on the way back. Our phones were dead. We got home, told our parents we'd gotten lost, made up some story about getting turned around near the river. And for a while, that was it. But the next week, Dylan stopped answering his texts. Then Marcus started missing class. Said he couldn't sleep. Said he was hearing things under his bed. Said the whispers were louder now. They both moved away within the year. I stayed. I told myself it was a shared hallucination. A gas leak. Something explainable. But last night, I went hiking with my dog behind the property. And I found a hole. Not a cave. Not a tunnel. Just a round depression in the earth. 4 feet wide. Perfectly circular. Still smooth. Still fresh. Still waiting. I think it followed me home. There's something about old gas stations off back roads that just feels wrong. The flickering fluorescence, the smell of mildew and rubber, the silence that creeps in when you're too far from anywhere. But I never thought a detour could be anything more than just annoying. That was before we stopped in Barden Hollow. Before I learned what buffer night really meant. This happened when I was 17. My two best friends, Jace and Kenny, and I had driven out from Springfield to spend the day at a lake about 3 hours south. It was a spontaneous trip. The kind that felt infinite when we were younger, windows down, music up, the heat of summer crawling on our skin. We stayed too long, though. Lost track of time. By the time we packed up and hit the road, the sun had already begun to sink, bleeding orange through the treetops. About an hour into the drive home, we missed a turn, our fault, just talking and laughing and not paying attention. The GPS glitched out, and with no signal in that rural dead zone, we just guessed. Turn left when maybe it should have been right. The roads narrowed. The trees thickened. We passed no signs. No lights. No other cars. Just woods and cracked pavement, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Eventually, the gaslight came on. We pulled into the first town we saw. No welcome sign. No posted population. It just blinked into existence like it had been waiting. One long main street. A few buildings, most of them shuttered. But there, at the center, was an old gas station. Lit up like a stage play. Buzzing with a kind of sickly yellow light. One pump. A rusted sign swinging on chains above the awning. Barden Hollow Service and Supply. We pulled in. As soon as the tires crunched over gravel, the wind seemed to die. The buzzing lights got louder. The air felt thicker. Jace killed the engine, and we just sat there for a moment. "You ever hear of this place?" I asked. "Nope," Kenny muttered, peering out the window. "Looks like it hasn't changed since the 70s. He wasn't wrong. Even the vending machine outside looked ancient. Sun-faded buttons, glass cloudy with grime. But the pump worked. Jay started filling up while Kenny and I went inside to pay and grab drinks. The bell over the door jingled. The smell hit first: old wood, damp concrete, and something underneath. Something metallic. A man stood behind the counter. Mid-60s, maybe older. Lean frame. Wide smile. He wore a faded red work shirt with "Roy" stitched above the pocket. "Evening, boys," he said, voice smooth like syrup. "Cutting it close tonight, aren't ya?" Kenny laughed. "Yeah, we got a little turned around." The man didn't laugh with him, just looked at the two of us for a long beat. Then he said, "You'll need to make haste. It's buffer night." We exchanged glances. "Sorry. What?" I asked. "Buffer night," he repeated, still smiling. "Clock's ticking. You don't want to linger." His tone was friendly, but the air shifted. A low hum beneath his words. Like he wasn't just warning us, he was trying not to say more. Kenny tried to keep it light. "What's that?" "Some kind of local curfew." "Something like that," Roy said. "Just don't be on the road after midnight. Especially not around here." The bell jingled again. We turned. Two people entered from a hallway we hadn't noticed. A man and a woman, both middle-aged, both dressed like they'd stepped out of another decade. Collared shirts, pressed pants, clean but faded. They moved together, in sync, smiling. "Are these the guests?" the woman asked, eyes locked on us. Roy's smile faltered. "No, just some lost boys. On their way out." The man and woman stared for a second too long. Then, in unison, they said, "Make haste. Tonight is buffer." Kenny let out a nervous chuckle, but I was already sweating. My skin was buzzing, my heart beating wrong. We paid for the gas, skipped the drinks, and practically sprinted out the door. Jace was already in the car, engine running. "Let's go," I said, throwing myself into the back seat. "What happened in there?" he asked. "Just drive." The road out of town was straight, flat, and silent. No wind, no bugs, not even the sound of tires on pavement. That silence followed us for miles, until we saw her. A woman standing in the middle of the road, wearing a reflective vest, holding a stop sign. We slowed down, rolled to a stop. Jace lowered the window. "Road work ahead," she said. Her voice was mechanical, rehearsed. Just a delay, nothing to worry about. She didn't blink. We glanced behind her. No lights, no workers, no machinery. Just empty black road stretching into the woods. "How long's the wait?" Jace asked. The woman tilted her head. "Until the others pass." "What others?" She smiled. "You'll see." Then she turned the sign from stop to slow. We drove past. For the next 30 miles, we saw no other cars. No signs of construction. No lights. No towns. No stars. Just road and fog and a crawling sense of being watched. We didn't speak again until we hit the highway. Jace exhaled. What the hell was that? None of us answered. Because none of us knew. Later that year, I looked up Barton Hollow. There's no record of it. Not on maps. Not in archives. Not even old newspaper clippings. But when I brought it up at a family gathering, my uncle, who spent years driving trucks cross-state, went pale. "You saw them?" he asked, voice low. "Who?" "The Hollow folk. On buffer." I asked what that meant. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "Some towns don't exist until you need to find them. And if you're unlucky, you find them on buffer night." "Why unlucky?" He didn't answer, just muttered. "The ones they call guests don't ever leave." Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the signs swinging above the gas station. Still see the smiling faces behind the counter. And I wonder what would have happened if Roy had said yes. If he'd told them we were the guests. And I wonder if somewhere, right now, that old gas station is glowing again. Waiting for someone else to get lost. Waiting for the next buffer night. When I was 10, I started closing the curtains before bed. Not because of monsters, or thunderstorms, or the moonlight keeping me awake. I did it because there was a man in the window. And the worst part was, no one believed me. At first, we lived in a one-story ranch house in rural Indiana. Quiet town. Gravel roads. Big yards with trees that whispered secrets at night. My room faced the backyard, which opened up into a stretch of woods behind the property line. We had motion lights back there, but they rarely triggered, except for raccoons, maybe deer. Or, sometimes, something else. I first saw him the week after school started. I remember it clearly. September, still warm, with just enough chill in the wind to remind you fall was coming. I was sitting on my bed reading Goosebumps, fitting, I know, when I felt something. Not a sound, not a sight, just a shift. The way the room feels different when someone's behind you. I looked up. My window was open, screen closed, but glass slid all the way up. I liked the breeze at night. That's when I saw him. A figure at the edge of the woods. Standing still, arms at his sides. Watching. I stared, frozen, for what felt like hours. He didn't move. Not a twitch. I told myself it was just a tree. A shadow. My imagination. But I knew the trees. And they didn't have shoulders. Or heads. Or faces. I slid off the bed, crept to the window, and eased it shut. Then I closed the curtain. Didn't sleep much that night. For the next week, it happened again. And again. Every night. Just after 9:30. I'd feel it. That shift. And every time, I'd peek out the curtain and see him. Always standing in the same place, just beyond the yard. Watching. I told my parents. My mom chalked it up to too much TV. My dad said maybe it was a neighbor. Someone walking a dog. But I knew. There was no dog. And he wasn't walking. He was waiting. Eventually, I stopped looking. Closed the curtains tight, clipped them shut with old binder clips, piled books on the windowsill so I wouldn't be tempted to peek. But the motion light still came on. Every single night. Things got worse when my cousin April came to stay with us. She was 16, confident, city girl. Her mom, my aunt, had fallen pretty hard into addiction, and my parents offered to take April in until things stabilized. I was excited at first. April was cool. She taught me how to paint my nails, showed me how to make microwave mug cakes, even let me borrow her music CDs. Her room was the guest room, across the hall from mine, facing the same woods. The second night she was there, she knocked on my door. It was 10:12 p.m. Her face was pale. "Hey, do you guys have, like, weird animals out there?" she asked. "Why?" "I think I saw someone." My stomach dropped. We sat in silence for a few seconds before I whispered, "Was he standing still?" "Just watching." Her eyes widened. "You've seen him too?" We told my parents again. This time, April did most of the talking. She had that older teen confidence, that fire that made adults actually listen. My dad agreed to check the security light logs. Turns out it had been going off every night for 12 days, always between 9:20 and 10 p.m. So he set up a camera. The next night, we all watched the live feed on the living room TV. Nothing. At first, the yard was still. The wind barely moved the tall grass. No light triggered. Then, just after 9:45, something shifted. You couldn't see him walk in. He was just there, standing at the edge of the yard. No shirt. Skin so pale it almost glowed under the night sky. He stood completely still for over 5 minutes. Then the camera glitched. Just a blip. When it came back, he was closer. My dad stood up. "That's enough. I'm calling the sheriff." But the sheriff didn't find anything. No footprints. No signs of anyone on the property. No recent reports of prowlers or missing people. He said it was probably some local kid playing a prank. We didn't believe him, especially not after what happened the next night. April woke me up just before midnight. She was shaking. "There's someone in the house," she whispered. I froze. We crept out into the hallway. The air was still. Too still. Then we heard it. A soft tapping. Tap. 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 Coming from the guest room. From the inside of the closet. We ran to my parents' room. My dad stormed into April's room and flung the closet open. Empty. No broken lock. No signs of forced entry. Just an open window and a damp smell in the air, like wet leaves and rust. After that, my dad nailed the window shut. Installed new locks. Bought extra cameras. April and I slept in the same room with a bat between us. The man didn't come back. For a while. 2 years later, after April had moved back in with her mom, and I was starting high school, we got a letter. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It was me, April, and my parents, taken through our kitchen window. We were eating dinner, smiling, laughing. There was a message scribbled in red marker on the back. "Tell the girl in the window I miss her. I still live in that town. Different house, different windows, but I never leave the curtains open anymore. And some nights, just past 9:30. The motion light still comes on. I used to love living alone. The silence, the space, the control over my own world. It was peaceful, even comforting. But that changed the night someone knocked on my door and called me by my father's name. It was a rainy Tuesday when I moved into the apartment. A third-floor unit in an older building tucked just off the edge of campus. The hallway lights always buzzed, and the walls had a slight tobacco stain no one seemed to care about. But the rent was cheap, and I didn't need much. It was mine, my first real place. The first 2 months were uneventful. I got used to the quirks, like how the water only ran hot if you turned the sink on first, or how the radiator clanked like it was dying in slow motion. The neighbors kept to themselves, mostly grad students or old-timers who'd lived there since the 80s. Everything was normal, until the knocking started. It happened for the first time at exactly 3:17 a.m. I remember because I checked the clock. The sound wasn't aggressive, just a soft, polite knock. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. I froze in bed, thinking maybe I'd imagined it. But then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. I got up and peeked through the peephole. No one was there. The hallway was empty, dim. I chalked it up to a dream. One of those half-sleep delusions where your brain plays tricks on you. But then it happened again the next night. And the night after that. Always at 3:17. Always 3 knocks. By the 4th night, I was rattled. I stayed up on purpose, sitting on the couch with a baseball bat and my phone clutched in my hand. I kept telling myself it was a prank, maybe some drunk student with the wrong door. I'd confront them, tell them to knock it off, and that would be the end of it. At 3:17, right on the dot, the knocking came again. I was at the door in 2 seconds. I yanked it open. Nothing. Not a soul in the hallway. No footsteps. No creaking stairs. Just stillness. That's when I noticed the door across from mine slowly closing, like someone had just stepped back inside. The unit belonged to an older man. I'd only seen him twice, once when I moved in, and once when I passed him in the stairwell. He didn't talk much. Walked with a slight limp. Always looked like he was trying to remember something just out of reach. I stared at his door for a while, then went back to bed. The next day, I left for class a little early and ran into him at the mailbox. I asked casually if he'd heard anything strange the past few nights, maybe someone knocking on doors or running through the hall. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Don't answer." I blinked. "Don't answer what?" "The door," he whispered, glancing up the hallway. "If it knocks, don't answer. Doesn't matter what it says." Before I could ask anything else, he shuffled off. I stood there, heart pounding in my ears, clutching a handful of bills like they were weapons. That night, I didn't sleep. I left every light on, locked the door, slid the deadbolt into place, even wedged a chair under the handle like I'd seen in movies. 3:17 arrived like a deadline. Knock, knock, knock. I sat motionless, breath caught in my throat. Then a voice. "Marty." It was a man's voice. Deep. Familiar. "Marty, it's me." I stared at the door. I hadn't told anyone in this city my dad's name. "Marty, it's getting cold out here. Let me in, son." My stomach dropped. My dad had died 6 years ago. The voice didn't repeat itself. It just lingered, like it was waiting for me to respond. Then it whispered, "You left me in the garage." I nearly threw up. That was true. When I found my dad after his heart attack, he was in the garage. I'd been inside the house for over an hour, wondering where he was, texting him like an idiot. When I finally checked. How would anyone know that? I stood, moved toward the door. Just a few steps. My hand touched the doorknob, and then I remembered what the neighbor said. "Don't answer." I backed away. The voice didn't call again that night, but I didn't sleep. The next morning, I went across the hall and knocked on the neighbor's door. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Eventually, the landlord came up. He moved out 2 weeks ago, he said. Didn't tell anyone. Just packed a bag and left in the middle of the night. He's under the mat. But I just talked to him yesterday. The landlord gave me a strange look. "You sure?" I was. Until I wasn't. I bought a camera. Set it up facing the door. I told myself I needed proof. If it happened again, I'd capture it. That night, I waited. 3:17 came. Knock, knock, knock. Then silence. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared at the door. No voice this time. Just 3 knocks. In the morning, I checked the footage. At 3:17 a.m., the camera glitched. Right as the knock happened. When it came back, the hallway was empty except for a single frame at the edge of the timestamp. A silhouette. Tall. Thin. Leaning in toward the door. No features. No face. The footage corrupted itself shortly after. I moved out 3 days later, but I still wake up sometimes at exactly 3:17 a.m. And for a moment, I swear I hear knocking. Very soft. Very patient. Knock. 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 They say you're safest when you listen to your instincts. But when you're 12 years old and hungry, it's easy to ignore the twisting in your gut, especially when someone's smiling and offering you food like they've known you forever. I still can't eat roasted corn. Not after what happened that afternoon behind the park. It was July, one of those brutal Midwestern heat waves that made everything feel like it was breathing. Thick air, slow shadows, the ground hot enough to melt flip-flops if you stood too long. My little brother Leo and I had walked to the community park near our apartment complex. Our mom was at work, and we weren't supposed to go far, but the apartment felt like an oven and the park had sprinklers going. We stayed for hours. The water felt like heaven, and I even forgot for a while how our mom had skipped dinner again last night and told us not to worry, that the power bill had just gone up. By the time the sun started lowering and the grass turned gold, we were starving. My stomach was aching from the inside. That's when I smelled it. Roasted corn. Sweet, buttery, slightly charred. I turned around and saw the cart. It wasn't one of those flashy food carts. No umbrella. No decals. Just a rusty metal cart with big wheels and a little sign taped to the side in faded marker. Hot corn, $1. The man standing behind it was strange. Not scary at first glance. Just off. Too still. His smile too tight. His clothes didn't match the weather. A buttoned-up shirt with long sleeves, perfectly tucked into dark slacks. No sweat on him. Not even a shine. He was staring directly at us. "Would you kids like some corn?" he called out. His voice was smooth, cheerful, like a commercial. Leo tugged my arm. "Can we?" I hesitated. The man was smiling. The cart hissed with steam. And God, I was hungry. I checked my pocket. $2. I nodded. We approached. Up close, something felt wrong. The corn looked normal, bright yellow, thick, wrapped in foil. But it was the man's eyes. That was the first thing that really scared me. They were too dark. Not brown. Just black. Not glassy, not reflective. Just endless. "You don't have to pay," he said, reaching for a foil-wrapped ear. "First time's free. I always take care of my neighbors." I didn't remember seeing him before. Not around the park. Not in our building. Not at any of the community events. Still, Leo reached for it. So I grabbed his wrist. "We're good," I said quickly. "Thanks anyway." The man tilted his head. Smile still locked in place. "You sure?" he said. "This batch is fresh. Picked just this morning." Leo frowned. "You grow corn around here?" The man chuckled. "I do now." I started backing away, pulling Leo with me. The man didn't move. Didn't blink. As we turned, I glanced back once. He was still standing there, holding out the corn, watching us leave. We got home, and I told Mom. She shrugged it off. "Probably some guy from one of the farms up the road," she said. "They do pop-up carts sometimes. Harmless." But I couldn't shake it. And then the dream started. That night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. It wasn't clear at first, just a low murmur, like wind in tall grass. I sat up. Leo was asleep on the floor. We shared a room, and he liked sleeping next to the vent where it was coolest. The whispering got louder. I crept to the window. Outside, in the parking lot under the flickering streetlight, was the cart, just sitting there. And behind it, the man. He looked up at my window and smiled. I blinked, stepped back, heart hammering. When I looked again, he was gone. No cart, no man, just shadows. The next day, I went back to the park. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to prove it was just a weird guy, just a dream. Maybe I needed to believe it. But the cart wasn't there. Instead, I found foil. Torn foil wrappers scattered behind the trees. All of them stained with something dark, not grease. Something thicker, redder. I crouched and touched one. It was sticky. And then I heard a voice. "Did you come back for your corn?" I turned. The man was standing 5 feet behind me. No cart. No expression. Just his long arms, hanging too low. His sleeves were stained now, wet at the cuffs. I ran. I didn't even scream. Just ran until my chest burned and my legs shook. I didn't stop until I got home and locked the door. That night, Leo wasn't in his bed. I found him standing in the kitchen. The back door was open. He was barefoot, holding a corn cob. Still wrapped. Still steaming. "Where did you get that?" I asked, voice shaking. Leo smiled. "He left it for me," he said. "He said I earned it. He said I'm ready." Then he took a bite and spit out something black. I grabbed it from him. It wasn't corn. It was a tooth. Small. Yellowed. Human. We moved 3 weeks later. I never told anyone everything. Not my mom. Not even Leo, who didn't remember anything the next morning. Or at least pretended not to. But every summer, when the heat gets thick and the grass turns gold, I still catch that smell sometimes. Charred, sweet, buttery. Like corn. Like teeth. And I always wonder who's hungry next. I didn't realize something was wrong until I caught him watching me from the hallway mirror. Not looking at his daughter. Not talking to anyone. Just staring, silent and smiling. His name was Mr. Whitaker, and for one summer when I was 13, he became the reason I never went back to my best friend's house again. I met Anna Whitaker in 7th grade. We were instant best friends, same music taste, same sarcastic streak, same deep loathing for algebra. She lived just a few streets over, and her house was our headquarters. Movie marathons in the basement, junk food raids in the kitchen, late-night giggles about crushes we'd never talked to. At first, her family seemed normal enough. Her mom was the busy, distracted type, always folding laundry or whisper yelling into her phone about insurance. Her little brother was a shadow with sticky fingers. And her dad, Mr. Whitaker? Quiet. Always there. Always watching. I remember the first time I met him. I'd only been over twice before, and Anna invited me to stay for dinner. He sat at the end of the table like a statue. Didn't talk much, just nodded while we chatted, occasionally smiling at a joke. But every time I glanced his way, I noticed something unsettling. He was watching me, not Anna. Just this long, unbroken gaze. At first, I chalked it up to parental awkwardness. Maybe he was shy or weird around teens. Maybe I reminded him of someone. I told myself not to be paranoid. But over the next few weeks, it got worse. It started with little things. If I asked Anna a question while her dad was nearby, he'd answer instead, always before she had the chance. Sometimes he'd use her exact tone, almost like he'd memorized her voice. Whenever we passed him in the hallway, he'd greet me, but not her. I thought maybe I was imagining things. Then one night, Anna and I were lying on her bedroom floor, painting our nails and talking about school. Her door was cracked open just an inch, letting in the soft glow from the hallway. And suddenly, I felt it again. That unmistakable feeling of being watched. I turned my head. Through the crack in the door, I could see the edge of the hallway mirror, the old-fashioned kind that hung directly across from her bedroom. It reflected just a sliver of the hallway, and in that sliver was Mr. Whitaker's face. He wasn't walking past. He wasn't even standing in the open. He was leaning into the doorway, just enough for his reflection to catch in the mirror. His eyes locked with mine. I froze. "Anna," I whispered. She sat up. "What? Is your dad in the hallway?" She blinked, confused. Got up and opened the door fully. The hallway was empty. I didn't sleep that night. Something about his expression haunted me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't curiosity. It was pleasure. Like watching me had made him happy. A week later, things escalated. Anna's mom invited me to stay over for the weekend. My parents agreed. We had the whole thing planned: movies, snacks, maybe a walk to the gas station for slushies. That Friday night, we camped out in the basement. It was the coziest part of the house, big carpet, pillows everywhere, shelves of VHS tapes. I'd always liked it down there. Until I didn't. Anna fell asleep first, halfway through some cheesy horror movie. I stayed up, scrolling through my old iPod, the screen lighting my face in the dark. That's when I heard footsteps. Not from upstairs. From behind the basement wall. Soft. Measured. Then a creak. I sat up. There was a door in the far corner of the basement, and it said it led to a storage crawl space. They kept seasonal stuff down there. Decorations. Boxes of junk. The door was open an inch. I knew I hadn't opened it. I stared into the dark slit of the crawl space, my pulse pounding in my throat. Then I saw his eyes. Not wide open. Just the glint of them. Watching from the shadows. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I lay back down, turned on my side, and squeezed my eyes shut. I kept one hand on my phone, the other wrapped around Anna's wrist under the blanket. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, he was in the kitchen, drinking coffee. "Sleep well?" he asked, smiling at me over the rim of his mug. My mouth went dry. I said nothing. Just packed my things and told Anna I wasn't feeling well. I called my mom and asked her to pick me up early. She didn't ask questions, she never did. I didn't tell Anna why I left. Not then. Not ever. But here's the part one never told anyone. A few months later, long after I'd stopped going to Anna's house, her family moved away. No goodbye. No phone call. Just gone. Then one morning, I found something wedged in the crack of our mailbox. A small photograph. Black and white. Grainy. It was me, taken through a window. Probably my bedroom. I was lying on my stomach, reading a book. There was writing on the back. Much prettier when you're quiet. W. I never saw Mr. Whitaker again. But sometimes, when I pass old mirrors, I check the edges. Just in case he's still watching. It started with a penny. Just one. Lying face up on the sidewalk outside our house. Shiny, too new for a street that dusty. I picked it up, tossed it in my backpack, and forgot about it, like any 11-year-old would. I didn't know it was the beginning of something. Something watching. Something waiting. We lived in a quiet cul-de-sac on the edge of town, the kind of place where moms knew each other's names and kids got called in by porch light. It was me, my brother Caleb, and our neighbor Jamie, our tight little trio. Every morning we'd walk to the bus stop together at the end of the street. That's where the trail began. It was Jamie who noticed it first. "Hey," she said one morning, pointing at the ground near my mailbox. "Look." There were 3 pennies, spaced evenly, leading toward the sidewalk. All face up, all shiny. She picked one up and grinned. "Guess it's my lucky day." I laughed, grabbed the second one. Caleb took the third. We didn't think much of it. But the next morning, there were more. 6 this time. All in a line, starting near the curb and stretching halfway to the bus stop. We played it off like a game. Who would find the most? Who could flip theirs the highest? But by the 5th day, it wasn't funny anymore. There were dozens. Not just on our street now, but along the path we walked to school. All perfectly spaced. All heads up. Too clean. Too deliberate. And always 3 per cluster. One for each of us. I asked my mom about it. She laughed. Maybe someone's messing around. You know how kids are. But it didn't feel like a prank. It felt intentional. Targeted. We started testing it. One afternoon, Jamie left a penny flipped tail side up on the sidewalk, just to see what would happen. The next morning, it was gone. And in its place were 3 new ones. All heads up. All aligned. All leading toward the woods near the edge of the school. We never went in those woods. Everyone in town had their own version of a story about what was back there. Old shelters from the 70s. Creepy hermits. A sinkhole the county never fixed. Nothing official, just whispers. But that morning, the penny trail veered off the sidewalk and went straight toward the tree line. We stopped at the edge. Jamie looked at me. "It's trying to get us to follow." Caleb's voice was small. "What if someone's watching us?" We didn't answer. We just stood there. And for the first time, we didn't collect the pennies. That night, I couldn't sleep. At exactly 1:11 a.m., I heard something outside. Clink. Like a coin hitting pavement. I crept to my window and looked out. There, at the edge of our driveway, was a penny. Alone, gleaming in the moonlight. And beside it, just barely visible in the shadows, something was standing. Too tall, too still, watching the house. I blinked and it was gone. The penny remained. The next day, Jamie didn't come to the bus stop. Her mom said she wasn't feeling well. Caleb and I walked alone. The pennies were still there, more than ever now. Dozens. Hundreds. The path glittered with them, snaking off the sidewalk, twisting through grass, pointing deeper and deeper toward the woods. I refused to look at them. But Caleb, he bent down, picked one up, and it was warm. That afternoon, he didn't come straight home. I waited, got worried, started walking back toward the school, checking corners, calling his name. That's when I saw it. The trail. A perfect line of pennies veering off the main path, arcing around a chain-link fence and into the brush behind the school. My throat tightened. I followed. Slowly. Quietly. The air felt wrong. Thicker. The sun was still up, but everything was gray beneath the trees. The pennies led me to a clearing. And there, in the center, was Caleb's backpack. Neatly placed. Beside it, in the dirt, were more coins. Arranged in a circle. Each one face up. Each one clean, despite the mud. There was a sound, like breathing, but I didn't wait to see where it came from. I grabbed his bag and ran. They found Caleb 2 hours later, walking near the highway. Shoes gone. Feet bleeding. Eyes blank. He didn't speak for days. When he finally did, all he said was, "It doesn't want coins anymore." That night, I dumped every penny I owned into the trash. Jamie moved away a month later. Her family packed up in the middle of the night. No goodbye? Sometimes I dream about that clearing. The coins, the breathing, and something just beyond the trees, tall, thin, watching, waiting for me to follow the trail again. Because I think it left one more penny. Just one, right outside my window. When I was 12, I started sleeping with the blinds shut and the lights on. Not because I was scared of the dark, but because I was scared of what was standing in the dark. And because sometimes the dark looked back. It started the summer before 7th grade, after we moved into the new house. It was a split level on the edge of town, surrounded by big trees and quiet streets. Nothing creepy, nothing special. Just a house with a backyard that sloped into a shallow ditch, and a basement bedroom that used to belong to the previous owner's teenage son. That room became mine. It was cool in the summer, warm in the winter. My parents thought I'd love it, but I hated it. Because of the window. It was one of those wide, ground-level basement windows that let in just enough light to cast long shadows, but not enough to feel safe. It faced the side yard, right where the lawn dipped into the trees. A little too low. A little too exposed. The first night I slept down there, I woke up around 2 a.m. There was a light. Just a thin, wavering beam, like a flashlight, moving across my window. I froze, held my breath, watched it drift slowly across the glass, then disappear. It didn't come back. The next morning, I told my mom. She laughed. Probably a deer triggered the motion light. We didn't have one. That was the first time I felt it, that creeping chill under my skin. The kind that makes your ears ring and your arms go cold. I didn't sleep much the next night. The second time it happened, the light came back. Only now it moved slower. Deliberate. It didn't sweep like a flashlight. It lingered as if someone was pressing it to the glass, like they were trying to see in. I sat up in bed, heart hammering, and moved slowly to the far wall out of view. I stayed there until the sun came up. Still, I didn't tell my parents. I couldn't explain why. Maybe I didn't want to sound crazy. Maybe I was afraid they'd say the worst thing you can say to a scared kid. It's all in your head. But I started closing the blinds. Started sleeping with music on. And still, the light came. By the second week, I was on edge constantly. Daylight became a kind of safety. Night was something to endure. And then one morning, I noticed something odd outside my window. The grass was dead. A patch of it, directly in front of the glass, had turned brittle and brown. A perfect semicircle, as if someone had stood in place for a long time, too long. The dirt beneath was disturbed, loose, almost dug up. I stared at it for a long time. And that night, I didn't sleep at all. The light came again, brighter now. This time, it shook. The beam trembled against the glass like the hand holding it was twitching. The light danced, bounced, then suddenly snapped off. Silence. Darkness. Then something worse, a tap. 3 slow, deliberate knocks against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. My body locked. I couldn't move. I couldn't even cry out. Then a voice, muffled through the glass, almost playful. "You're not hiding very well." I screamed. My dad barreled down the stairs, flipped on every light. I told him everything. For the first time, I let it all out. He went outside. Nothing. No footprints. No one in the yard. Just that same patch of dead grass and a damp spot on the glass. Like breath. That weekend, he installed a security camera. He promised me, if someone's out there, we'll catch them. Part of me hoped we would. The other part didn't want to know what we'd find. 2 nights later, it came back. Not the light. The face. I woke up and saw it, half obscured behind the blinds. Pale. Hairless. Staring in. The eyes were wide, too wide, and the skin looked off. Like wax or stretch paper. No expression. Just stillness. It didn't blink. It didn't move. It just watched. I hid beneath the covers and waited for morning. When I checked the camera footage with my dad, the recording glitched. From 2:12 to 2:58 a.m., a full 46 minutes, the feed was static. Like something scrambled it. That's when my dad stopped making jokes. We called the police. An officer came by, asked questions, took notes. "I'm not saying it's nothing," he said, "but with no footprints, no camera footage, no damage, there's not much we can do." That night, my parents had me sleep in their room. The next morning, the basement window was open. From the inside. After that, they moved me upstairs. My old room became a storage space. The blinds stayed shut. The light stayed off. But sometimes, even now, I go down there. I don't know why. Curiosity. Regret. I need to confirm that it's really over. But every time I do, I feel it again. That same chill. That same pressure, like something just slipped behind me. And once, just once, I swear I saw it reflected in the glass. Not outside. Inside. They say you're safest behind locked doors, with the blinds shut tight. But the man with the light doesn't knock to come in. He waits until you stop looking. You never forget the streets you grow up on, not the cracks in the sidewalk, not the porch lights that never turn off, not the hidden paths you swore only you knew about. But there's one shortcut from my childhood I'll never take again, because I don't think it was meant to be found. I was 7 years old that summer, living with my grandma in a small Texas town called Dorsey. One of those places where time moves slower, where the sun is always too hot and the streets hum with cicadas like background noise. My grandma had one rule: stick to the big streets. Don't wander. But it was July, and I was thirsty, restless, and convinced I knew better. The corner store was just 6 blocks away, and I'd walked there with her plenty of times. But that day, I wanted to go on my own. Buy a soda, maybe a bag of chips. Something about doing it alone made me feel grown up. I slipped out after lunch. I told her I was going to play out front. She nodded from her chair, never looking up from her Bible. I walked the first few blocks just like usual, down the main drag where the houses sat neatly with their chain-link fences and rusted swing sets. But halfway there, I decided to take the shortcut. It was a little side street I'd seen before but never walked through. Narrow. Shaded. The pavement was cracked and bumpy, and the street signs were missing. The whole place felt forgotten. But it cut 2 blocks off the trip. At least, I thought it did. I stepped into the street, and the silence hit me like a slap. It was instant. No wind. No birds. No cars. Just heat. Stillness. And a hum in the back of my ears that made me feel like I was standing under power lines, even though there weren't any overhead. I walked on. The houses were spaced further apart here. Bigger lots, more overgrown yards. The grass in most of them was dead, the mailboxes crooked, and the windows all closed tight, even though it was at least 100 degrees out. Something about them looked wrong. Too dark. Too still. I kept walking. I remember passing a house with a tricycle tipped over in the yard, its wheels slowly spinning. But there was no breeze. And when I looked at the house behind it, I noticed something that made me stop cold. All the windows had mirrors taped to the inside. Big ones. Old, warped glass. Some cracked down the center. All of them facing in. Like the people living there didn't want to see outside. Or maybe didn't want something else looking in. I started to turn back. That's when I heard it. A voice. Faint. Whispery. Like someone calling from behind one of the houses. Hey kid. I froze. The voice came again. Still soft. Closer. Don't be scared. My throat went dry. I turned, slowly. Nothing. No movement. No one in the yards. Just the sound of insects, suddenly loud again. Buzzing, clicking, almost frantic. I walked faster. That's when I noticed the houses were changing. They weren't old anymore. They were rotting. Paint peeled like dead skin. Windows boarded from the inside. Doors warped and splintered like they'd been forced shut 100 times. And then I passed the mailbox. It was a rusted tin box nailed to a fence post. Scrawled on it, in black marker, were the words, "Don't follow the houses." I ran. I don't remember how long I ran. The street felt longer now, like it was stretching the more I moved. And the more I looked, the fewer things made sense. The trees were all the same, identical in shape, twisted in the same direction. One house had a door that repeated itself for identical doors, all side by side. Another house had no windows at all, but a chimney that was leaking black smoke, even though it was 100 degrees out and smelled like burning hair. My chest was tight. My legs burned. I turned around, and the street behind me was different. Houses I hadn't passed. Mailboxes with my name on them. Mirrors that now reflected me standing on the sidewalk, even though I wasn't near them. Then I heard the voice again, right behind me. "You're almost there." I didn't look. I couldn't. I just closed my eyes and ran. I didn't stop until I burst out into sunlight and stumbled back onto the familiar main road. Cars. Dogs barking. Lawn sprinklers clicking rhythmically. The world was back. I got home, drenched in sweat, lips cracked and shaking. My grandma scolded me for going off, but I barely heard her. I didn't speak about what I saw for years, but I never took that shortcut again. And years later, when I asked people about that street, No one remembered it. Even the town's map didn't show it. The block didn't exist. I thought maybe I made it all up. Until last year, when I went back to Dorsey to visit my grandmother's grave. I decided to walk to the store again, for old time's sake. And on the way there, just for a moment, I saw it. A narrow street. No name. No sound. And taped to one of the mailboxes. A mirror. With my reflection already waiting. Everyone remembers that kid on the school bus. The one who sits alone, mumbles to himself, and smells like damp clothes and something sour. Ours was named Travis, but no one called him that. We just called him Rod. I rode bus 43 all 4 years of high school. It wasn't anything special, just a regular yellow bus that rattled too much and smelled like vinyl and sweat. I was quiet back then, kept to myself. I'd sit near the middle with my earbuds in and my backpack on my lap, counting cracks in the ceiling tiles to pass the time. Rod always sat in the very back, right corner seat, every single day, without fail. He was small and twitchy, always hunched over like he was trying to disappear into himself. He wore the same oversized hoodie no matter the weather, and his jeans were always stained at the cuffs like he'd been crawling through wet grass. He muttered under his breath constantly, even when no one was talking to him. Sometimes he laughed, quiet, to himself. Nobody messed with him, not because they were kind, but because he was scary. I don't know where the nickname came from. Someone said he smelled like a wet dog that died in a dumpster. Someone else said they saw him eat something out of the trash behind the cafeteria. He never corrected anyone, never spoke loud enough for anyone to really hear. He just stared, and mumbled, and smiled when people stopped looking. The first time I really noticed him, it was sophomore year. A new girl, Amber, I think, sat in the seat in front of him. Probably didn't know the rules yet. She lasted 3 days. On the third day, she came onto the bus crying. Her backpack was ripped. One of her shoes was missing. The driver asked what happened. She said, "I tripped." Rod smiled the whole ride. That's when I started watching him more closely. He'd do these little things, press his fingers against the seat in front of him and count, tap the window 3 times every time we passed the same intersection, whisper names like he was cataloging something. Once, he leaned forward and whispered into the ear of a freshman boy who dared to sit next to him. The kid threw up 20 minutes later. One Friday, late October, the bus took a different route. Construction had closed our usual street, so we were detoured down an old farm road I didn't recognize. Long stretches of empty fields, fences that had fallen apart, a sagging house with boarded-up windows, and a truck with no wheels sitting out front. As we passed it, I heard Rot laugh. Loud, clear. I turned and saw him staring out the window, grinning ear to ear. "Home sweet home," he whispered. No one said anything. The bus was silent the rest of the ride. Things escalated that winter. Rot started bringing things onto the bus. Dead things. He'd pull something from his backpack. Small animals, always cold and stiff. A bird with broken wings. A possum missing its eyes. Once, he held up a raccoon's paw, just the paw, and whispered, "It still twitches if you hold it long enough." The driver started assigning assigned seats to keep people away from him, but he never enforced it. Rot stayed in the back, untouched, unbothered, but not alone, because one day, I swear to God, I saw something else back there. It was dusk, mid-January. The sun was setting behind the trees as we drove through the back roads near the edge of town. I turned to glance toward the back seat, and saw a second shadow. Not the girl next to him. She'd moved up after he started hissing at her. This one was behind him. Too tall. Wrong shape. It looked like it was hunched over him, whispering in his ear. And I swear, he nodded back. That night, I dreamed about the bus. Only it wasn't moving. We were all frozen in our seats, faces pale and lips blue. The windows were fogged over. The lights were flickering. And Rot was standing in the aisle, holding something in his arms. It looked like a bundle of wires and bone and wet fur. He whispered, "It's learning your names." I woke up screaming. Senior year, second week of spring, it happened. We'd just pulled away from the school, the usual route through the outskirts. Suddenly, the bus jolted, hard. The driver swore, tried to brake, but the bus kept moving. Faster. People started yelling. The driver was pounding the brakes, but they weren't responding. We blew through an intersection. Cars honked. Tires screamed. I looked out the window and realized we were heading straight toward that same farmhouse road, the one Rot called home. That's when I saw him, standing in the aisle, smiling, hands held out like he was guiding something. Almost there, he whispered. Just one more stop. We never crashed. Somehow, the bus stopped just before the tree line. The engine died. Lights went out. Route was gone. No one saw him leave. His seat was empty. No backpack. No hoodie. Nothing. The police said he'd never been enrolled. No student named Travis matched any records from our district. His ID? Fake. His address? Abandoned. He'd never existed. But I remember. I remember the smell, the whispers, and the thing in the back seat, watching us through the glass when we passed that broken-down house. Sometimes I still see the bus, parked on the side of the road near the tree line, empty, waiting. And when I drive by, my phone glitches and I hear tapping. 3 times. On the back window. They say the scariest places aren't haunted houses or forests at night. They're the ones you see every day, the ones that look harmless, familiar, safe. The ones just a little too quiet, a little too dark, a little too forgotten. For me, it was a narrow street behind a bakery in our old town in the Philippines. I only walked it once, and once was enough. I was 15, still skinny and awkward, the kind of kid who looked younger than he was and still got mistaken for a middle schooler. My mom worked long shifts at a hospital on the far side of town, and I'd started running errands for her in the evenings, just small things. A pack of rice, vinegar, a few eggs if the stall still had them before closing. That night, she gave me money for groceries and told me to hurry home before sundown. The heat was brutal. It was April, one of the hottest months in the Philippines, and everything felt sticky and loud. Tricycles honking, vendors yelling, dogs barking in the distance. I made it to the Sari store just fine, loaded the bag with canned goods and noodles, and turned to head home. Normally, I'd take the long way around, up along the highway, past the barber shop and church, then back into our neighborhood. It was safer, busier, lit. But that day, I was tired. The bag was heavy, and I remembered the shortcut. It was just a side street, one that connected 2 long roads through the older part of town. I'd seen it during the day, cutting behind the panaderia, the bakery that always smelled like warm pan diesel in the morning. I knew people used it. I'd even heard my classmates talk about it. Mas mabilis yan. It's faster, they'd say. So I figured, why not? The sun was low, but still out. I figured I could make it through in a few minutes. I stepped in, and I swear the heat disappeared. The air was still. Not cool. Just dead. The walls rose up on either side, tall concrete fences, gray and cracking, covered in patches of dark green mold. I couldn't even see over them. There were no doors, no windows, just wall. And the path between them was barely wide enough for me to walk straight. No streetlights, no people, just a narrow passage and the sound of my own sandals slapping the pavement. After about 30 seconds, I realized how much darker it had gotten. The sun was still out behind me. I could see it glowing through the entrance, but ahead of me it was already dim, as if the street was eating the light. I told myself not to be stupid. I kept walking. About halfway through, I noticed something weird. The concrete beneath my feet was wet. There hadn't been any rain that day, not for weeks. But a thin, slick layer of water, or something like water, covered the ground. I looked down and froze. There were footprints, small ones, barefoot, pressed into the damp concrete. And they didn't lead ahead. They led toward me. I looked up and realized I couldn't see the exit anymore. Not behind me, not ahead, just gray. I spun around, suddenly disoriented. Everything looked the same. And then I heard it. A sound like skin slapping concrete. Smack, smack, smack. Footsteps. Running. Coming fast. But not from ahead of me. Not behind. From the walls. I dropped the bag. Bolted. Ran blind. Turned corners that hadn't been there before. The passage twisted, folded, branched in ways it never had. I should have hit the end by now. It was only supposed to be a block long, but it kept going. And the walls got closer. The air got thicker. And the sound behind me got louder. Smack, smack, smack. Faster, closer, until it was right behind me. I turned. Nothing. But the ground beneath me had changed. No longer concrete. It was tiled. I was standing in front of a door. Wooden. Old. Covered in peeling white paint and strange symbols carved deep into the grain. I didn't open it. I didn't move. I just stared. And the moment I reached out, bang, It flew open. I woke up on the ground. Outside. It was night now, pitch black, and I was lying in the grass beside the main road near my house. No bag of groceries. No shortcut behind me. Just open fields. When I got home, my mom slapped me so hard I bit my tongue. She had called neighbors, even gone to the barangay for help. I'd been gone 4 hours. I tried to explain. She didn't believe me. Said I probably got mugged and hit my head. Maybe I did. But here's the thing. The next day, I went back. Just to look. And the narrow street was gone. No panaderia. No cracked concrete walls. Just a fenced-off lot with rusted metal gates and a sign that read, "Property of municipality. Do not enter." I asked around. No one remembered a shortcut there. Not even the old folks. Not even the bakery. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm walking home alone, I hear it again. Smack, smack, smack. And I see footprints on the wet concrete, leading toward me. If you'd like, I can continue this into a part 2 or build a mini-series around cursed shortcut roads in different parts of the world. Just say the word. They say you can't outrun the past. I used to think that was just something people said after a breakup or a bad decision. But sometimes the past runs toward you, with a knife in its hand and your name in its mouth. I grew up in a rundown neighborhood on the edge of the city. Not quite rural, not quite urban. Just rows of cracked sidewalks, sagging porches, and the kind of silence that only ever meant trouble. I had a best friend back then, Jake. We'd known each other since kindergarten. Shared everything: gum, secrets, beat-up action figures. He was more like a brother than a friend. We got into trouble together, fought other kids together, snuck candy into the movies, and stayed up watching horror flicks until our eyes burned. But around the time we turned 13, something started changing in him. He got quiet, cold. He hung out with older kids, guys with loud voices, ratty clothes, and eyes that never smiled. My mom started warning me about him. Said he was going down a dark path. I didn't believe her. I wish I had. The last time I saw Jake, really saw him, was the summer before high school. I was 14. He came to my house like usual, tossed pebbles at my window like we were still kids. We went to the park, sat under the tree by the swing sets. He didn't talk much, just stared at the sky and said weird things. Do you ever feel like the world's just waiting for something bad to happen? I shrugged it off. Teen angst, I thought. We all go through it, right? Then he asked me something that made my skin crawl. If I did something bad, like really bad, would you still be my friend? I laughed, told him he was being dramatic, but he didn't laugh back. After that, we drifted. He started skipping school, got into fights. People whispered about drugs, stolen stuff, sketchy deals in alleyways. I avoided him, told myself he wasn't my problem anymore. Until one night, he knocked on my door out of nowhere. He looked different, thinner, paler, eyes sunken, clothes too big, like they'd been stolen or borrowed. He smelled like smoke and rust. He asked if I wanted to hang out, said he had something cool to show me, something real. I almost said no. I should have said no, but I didn't, because a part of me still saw the boy who once gave me his last fruit roll-up and defended me from bullies. So I said sure, and we walked into the dark. He led me through our old neighborhood, down streets that felt unfamiliar in the moonlight. Broken street lights flickered above us. Dogs barked in the distance. Somewhere, a bottle shattered. I asked where we were going. He just said, "You'll see." We ended up behind the old bakery, the one that shut down years ago. Its windows were boarded. The parking lot was cracked, weeds growing through the concrete like veins. He motioned toward the alley beside it, and that's when I saw them. 3 guys, waiting in the shadows. Faces half hidden by hoodies. One had a knife. Another wore brass knuckles. The third just stared at me, expressionless. My stomach dropped. Jake stepped back and smiled. "Empty your pockets," one of them said. I froze. Now, I couldn't move. I looked at Jake. "What the hell is this?" He didn't answer. Just turned his face away like he couldn't watch. Like he didn't want to watch. But he'd brought me there. And then it hit me. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mugging. This was planned. By him. I didn't have much on me. A phone. $20. House keys. I handed them over with shaking hands. But that wasn't enough. The one with the knife stepped closer. "No witnesses," he said. And I swear he meant it. That's when Jake looked up. And something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition. Maybe regret. He stepped between me and the knife. Wait, he said. I know him. The guy with the blade didn't stop. Doesn't matter. It matters to me. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jake said it again, louder, firmer. It matters to me. The guy finally stepped back, spat on the ground. Jake grabbed my arm. Run. We tore through the alley, through the streets, past flickering lights and barking dogs and the ghost of our childhood. He didn't say anything until we reached the edge of the neighborhood. I didn't know they were going to do that, he said, out of breath. I stared at him. You brought me there. His eyes filled with something, guilt? Fear? Maybe just the sudden realization of how far gone he was. I just thought they'd scare you. Just take your stuff. That's all. I didn't answer. I just walked away. I didn't tell anyone what happened. What could I say? That my childhood best friend lured me into a trap and then saved me from it? The lines were too blurry, but I never saw him again. He disappeared after that. Some said he ran away. Others said he got caught up with people even worse than those three in the alley. I tried not to care. But sometimes, late at night, I'd hear tapping at my window. Just like when we were kids. I never looked. Years later, I saw a headline. Man arrested in home invasion gone wrong. There was a photo. It was Jake. Thinner. Older. Eyes dead. He'd broken into someone's house and held them at knife point. Got tackled trying to run. I stared at the mugshot for a long time. And all I could think about was that night. The knife. The alley. And the way he said, "It matters to me." Now I sleep with my doors locked tight. I don't go out after dark. And I never, ever answer knocks at the window. Because I don't know if I'm more afraid he's still out there. Or if I'm afraid he's not. You always think your home is the safest place. Until someone with a smile and a clipboard asks to use your bathroom, and you realize, too late, that you let a stranger into your world. I was 4 years old when he first came to our door. Back then, our neighborhood was packed with young families and elderly couples, the kind of place where people still waved from their porches and watched your kids when you weren't looking. It was quiet, clean, and deeply suburban. And like clockwork, every Thursday afternoon, the frozen food truck would come rolling down the cul-de-sac. It was this boxy white and blue vehicle with a faded cartoon cow on the side. Harvest Choice Meats, it read in peeling letters. Inside were prepackaged dinners, frozen vegetables, and mystery meats bundled in plastic wrap. My mom, juggling a pair of hyperactive twins, me and my sister, and a tight budget, loved it. It saved her trips to the store. And so, without fail, she'd open the door and smile at the delivery guy when he knocked. His name was Greg. Or at least, that's what he said. At first, he seemed nice. Normal. Clean-shaven. White polo. Talkative. He always greeted us kids with a goofy grin and a little wave. Hey there, girls. How's kindergarten treating you? Then he'd go on about his own daughter, same age as us. He said how she loved popsicles, how she had the same missing tooth my sister had. We liked him. Even my mom, cautious as she was, gave him the benefit of the doubt. But I remember her mentioning to my aunt once, he's a bit too friendly. Always talking. Doesn't stop. Still, nothing seemed wrong. Until he asked to use her bathroom. The first time, my mom hesitated. He was polite, said he'd been driving all day and really had to go. It was hot, he looked sweaty, and he didn't seem threatening. So she let him in. He was gone a long time. Longer than anyone should be for a quick bathroom break. When he finally came out, he didn't say much. Just smiled, nodded, handed over the frozen food, and walked back to his truck. The next week, he did it again. No explanation this time. Just, mind if I use the restroom real quick? He didn't wait for an answer. Just brushed past her like he belonged. Again, he stayed too long. Again, she said nothing. But I remember her watching him differently now. Less smile, more suspicion. She stopped letting us near the hallway when he was inside. The third time, everything changed. It was raining. I remember that clearly because our small dog barked like crazy at the thunder. Greg showed up drenched, hair slicked back, smile unusually wide. My mom opened the door just a crack. And without waiting, he asked, "Is your husband home?" My mom lied and said yes. He nodded, stepped back, and handed her the order. No small talk this time. No bathroom visit. After that, she stopped answering the door when he came. But then he stopped ringing the bell. Instead, we'd find the boxes already dropped off by the front step. Once, the freezer bag was open, half melted. Another time, the bags weren't even from the company. Just random Ziplocs. Then, one afternoon, she caught him standing outside the front window. Not at the porch. At the side of the house, peering in through the blinds. She screamed, called the delivery company. They told her Greg had moved routes 3 weeks earlier. They had no idea who she was talking about. It was only later that we pieced it together. He hadn't been a regular employee, just a fill-in, no last name given. Used a burner phone number. Claimed to be subbing for another guy who was on medical leave. No one knew where he came from. And then my mom remembered something chilling. He'd always talk about his daughter, but we never saw a photo. And when she asked his name once, his full name, he said, smiling, "Call me whatever you like." That night, my mom called the cops. They took a report. Didn't find much, but she changed the locks. Stopped all deliveries. And for a while, things were quiet. Until one morning, we found something outside the bathroom window. A Polaroid. It showed the inside of our house, taken from just behind the curtain. There was no note, just a smiley face, drawn in thick black marker. We moved a month later. My mom told people it was for work, for a fresh start. But I remember the real reason. And I still don't use public restrooms without checking the lock 3 times. Because sometimes, monsters don't need to break down your door. You invite them in, and they smile while they learn where everything is. They say children imagine things, monsters in the closet, shadows in the corners. But I wasn't imagining it. I saw him. He stood at the edge of the woods across from our backyard, just far enough to be hidden unless you looked hard. And he watched me, every night. We lived in a rundown house in a forgotten part of town. One of those places where the yards are overgrown and the streetlights flicker like dying fireflies. Our backyard backed into an untamed mess of trees, brush, and dirt paths people used as shortcuts to the main road. It was a place where people came and went. Junkies, strays, strangers. My bedroom was in the basement. It had one of those small, rectangular windows just above ground level. You could see out, but only if you crouched. I hated that window, because he was always there. At first, I only caught glimpses, movement behind the trees, a silhouette where there shouldn't be one. Then the flashlight started, a thin beam flicking across my wall. It wasn't random. It always started around midnight. It would hover at the edge of the glass, as if someone was slowly tracing the frame. Then came the face, pressed to the glass, pale, gaunt, eyes wide and dark like they had no whites. He never blinked, never spoke, just stared. I was 8 the first time I saw him up close. I screamed. My mom ran downstairs, turned on the lights, looked out the window, and there was nothing. She told me I had a bad dream, but it kept happening. Every night. The beam, the face, the silence. I stopped sleeping. I started dragging my mattress to the hallway just to escape that window. My mom still didn't believe me. Until one morning, she walked outside to prove I was imagining things. And there it was. The grass, trampled into the dirt, only outside my window. Long, heavy footprints, worn into the mud from someone standing there for hours. And scratch marks, deep ones, like someone had been trying to claw through the wall with a blade. She didn't say anything. She just stared. Then she went inside and locked every window in the house. Around that time, I started spending all my afternoons with my best friend, Riley. She lived 2 houses down. Her mom worked late like mine, so we stuck together, playing in the yard, sneaking snacks, sometimes visiting this sweet old woman at the end of the block who always gave us Little Debbies and soda. It was our secret, our hideout. We never told our parents we went inside her house. One day, my mom called me to go pick up food with her. I ran home, hopped in the car, gone maybe 15 minutes. When we came back, everything was wrong. Flashing lights, crime scene tape, cops, news vans, a helicopter circling overhead, all parked in front of Riley's house. We jumped out of the car and pushed through the crowd. I couldn't see her, couldn't find her mom. No one would tell us what happened. Not until hours later. Riley had been sitting on her porch, talking on the phone with a friend, making faces and laughing. That was it. She was just being a kid. But someone saw her. A man who thought she was laughing at him. He had been staying with his mother down the block, the sweet old woman with the snack cakes. He'd gotten out of prison a month earlier. He saw Riley, thought she was mocking him, and snapped. He walked past her house, watched, then went back home. Came back with a butcher knife. Riley saw him coming. She ran inside, locked herself in the bathroom, dialed 911. But her mom was still in the kitchen. The man broke in. He didn't go after Riley. He found her mom, and he stabbed her, over and over, more than 20 times. Somehow, she survived, but the blood soaked through the floorboards, out the back door, across the porch. It stained the grass. I found out later, it was him. The man from my window. The one who watched me sleep. The one who followed us. He'd been inside the old woman's house the whole time. He met us. He saw me. And after that, he watched. Every night. When they showed his mugshot on the news, I couldn't breathe. That was the face. The face I saw in the window. The face I saw by the woods. The man who scratched at the glass like he was trying to peel the house open. The man who could have killed me if I hadn't gone with my mom that day. We never moved. My mom said the danger was over. But I never slept in that room again. And to this day, I don't leave the blinds open. Because sometimes, I still feel eyes on me when the lights go out. And I wonder, what if he wasn't the only one watching? You always think the danger will look like danger, loud, dirty, mean. But when you're a kid, you don't expect it to smile. You don't expect it to smell like buttered corn and wear a checkered apron. And you never expect it to offer you something you love. It was spring break when it happened. I was 12. We weren't on vacation or anything fancy, just a typical day in my city, the air thick with heat and car horns and the chatter of vendors pushing carts down cracked sidewalks. I was at the park with my mom, my aunt, and my cousin, a year older than me, the type of boy who still thought fart jokes were the height of comedy. He was off riding bumper cars. I was sitting on a bench with the adults, bored out of my mind, kicking dust and daydreaming about anything that didn't involve being sweaty and stuck with family. That's when I saw the vendor. Big metal pot. Steam rising from it. The unmistakable scent of boiled corn and butter. I was obsessed with corn on the cob. My mom knew this. So when I pointed, she handed me some money and told me to buy 4, one for each of us. I smiled, excited. I had no idea I was walking into something I wouldn't forget for the rest of my life. The man was older than I expected. Not elderly, but not young either. Maybe mid-50s. He had a faded cap, thick mustache, and calloused hands that looked like they'd been cooking forever. His clothes were clean, but smelled faintly of something metallic, something wrong. He smiled when I approached. "You like corn, huh?" I nodded. "4, please." He didn't open the pot, didn't even glance inside. Instead, he looked me over. Not in a casual way, no. This felt like sizing me up. Like he was measuring something more than my height or age. He said, scratching his chin. "Might not be enough in this one, but I have another pot in my car. Right over there." He pointed down the alley beside the park, a narrow, shaded corridor lined with rusting garbage bins and damp pavement. At the end, just barely visible, was a parked white van. No logo. No plates I could see. I hesitated. He noticed. "It's just around the corner," he said. "Real quick. Don't worry. I'll carry it." He lifted the pot off the burner like it weighed nothing and started walking. Slowly, not looking back. I stood there, the money crumpled in my hand. And then, like a spell, I followed. The air in the alley was different. Cooler. Wet. Like the walls themselves were sweating. I kept thinking about the corn. How proud I'd feel bringing it back to my mom. How happy she'd be. But then he stopped, halfway down the alley, set the pot on the ground, and turned. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You don't have to tell your mom," he said. I froze. "What?" He stepped closer. "I can show you something better than corn." My heart stuttered. Suddenly, everything was too quiet. The sounds of the park were gone. I couldn't hear the bumper cars or my cousin's laughter or my aunt's voice. Just the hum of a distant power line, and the sound of him breathing. Heavy. Wet. I stepped back. He stepped forward. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm nice." I didn't scream. I wish I could say I did, but I didn't. I was too stunned, too frozen. My brain couldn't process what was happening, how quickly this turned from a snack run to something wrong. Then, I heard a voice. Not his. "Hey." It was my cousin. He'd seen me slip into the alley and had followed. The man's expression shattered. He grabbed the pot, cursed under his breath, and bolted. I ran toward my cousin, tears already in my eyes, legs trembling so bad I nearly collapsed into them. He didn't say anything, just walked me back to the bench like nothing happened. I didn't tell my mom that day. Not really. I said the vendor ran out. That's why I came back empty-handed. She was annoyed, but she didn't ask questions. It took me years to talk about it. Then last year, I saw his face again. On a news article. Man arrested in connection to missing children in 4 states. He was older now. Gray hair. Thinner. But the eyes. Those were the same. Cold. Flat. Like puddles in winter. The article said he'd used a food vendor cover to scout parks and schoolyards. Always alone. Always patient. They found evidence in his van. Things I won't describe. Now, I check every alley I pass. Every white van. And when I see a vendor cart, I walk the other way. Because you never know what someone's really serving. And some people, they don't come for money. They come for you. There's something unnatural about a stare that never blinks. I don't mean a quick glance, or someone watching you from across a room. I mean the kind of stare that feels like it's boring through your walls, waiting. It started with a flashlight outside my bedroom window. I was 12, and my room was in the basement. One of those narrow rectangular windows that sat just above ground level, barely wide enough to crawl through, but still enough to see the base of the yard. That's where I first saw the light. Just a flicker, like someone scanning the side of the house. At first, I thought it was the neighbor's motion lights, or maybe someone walking a dog with a flashlight. But when I peeked through the blinds, I saw him. A man. Standing still. So still, I thought he might be a statue. No phone in hand. No cigarette. No movement. Just staring. Right at me. I blinked. Backed away. Waited a second. Then peeked again. Gone. I told my mom the next morning. She laughed it off. Nightmares, she said. Don't watch scary movies before bed. But it kept happening. Over the next few weeks, it got worse. The flashlight came every other night. Sometimes later. Sometimes earlier. And sometimes I'd catch the faintest glimpse of a face, pale, with deep-set eyes and thin lips. No expression. No curiosity. Just that cold, fixed stare. I tried recording it once. Left my phone in the window overnight. But when I checked the footage the next morning, it had been deleted. I hadn't touched it. And my mom didn't even know how to use the camera app. One morning, I refused to go to school. Told my mom everything. Begged her to check the yard with me. She agreed, mostly to shut me up. We stepped outside in the cold morning air and walked to the back of the house. And that's when she saw it. The grass outside my window flattened. Not just trampled. Worn down to dirt. A narrow patch, the exact width of a pair of feet, dead and muddy. Right where he stood. And scratch marks, deep, jagged ones, etched into the siding beneath my window. As if someone had been trying to pry it open with a blade. Her face went pale. That was the first time I ever saw my mom genuinely afraid. She called the police. They came, took photos, said they'd patrol more often. But they never found anyone. And that same night, he came back. This time without the flashlight. This time with just his eyes. Around that same time, I started spending more time with my best friend, Nia. She lived next door. We were inseparable, always sneaking candy, building forts in her backyard, biking to the gas station for slushies with whatever change we had. There was an old woman on the corner, Mrs. Lenz. She loved us, called us her little angels. We'd visit her almost every day after school. She always had cookies, juice, stories from the old days. She was sweet, harmless. We never told our parents we went inside her house. It was our secret. One day, my mom took me to grab takeout. We were only gone 15 minutes. When we got back, everything changed. The street was sealed off with crime scene tape. Cops everywhere. News vans. Helicopters. Neighbors huddled on sidewalks, whispering. Nia's house was at the center of it all. We ran toward the commotion, frantic. That's when we heard the story. Nia had been sitting on the porch, talking on the phone, laughing. Just being a kid. A man walked by. One the neighbors hadn't seen before. He stared at her. Just stared. Then walked on. But a few minutes later, he came back, holding a butcher knife. Nia saw him first, coming from the sidewalk, heading toward the porch. She ran, locked herself in the bathroom, called 911. But her mom, who had been in the kitchen, never saw it coming. He broke in through the side door and stabbed her. Over 20 times. She lived. Somehow. But it took multiple surgeries. The man was caught trying to flee through the back alley. His mugshot was on the news that same night. I saw it on the living room TV while my mom held my hand tight. And my whole body went cold. Because it was him. The man from my window. They said he'd been staying with someone nearby. A relative. Someone. Old. Someone like Mrs. Lenz. That's when the final pieces came together. He was her son. Fresh out of prison. She never told anyone. He'd been there every time we visited, watching, listening. And when I saw his face again, this time in full, in clear light on TV, I realized something else. We had met him before. He was in the house with us, offered us cookies once, joked about our pretty little eyes. We laughed. We didn't know. They said he'd become fixated, that he believed Nia had mocked him when she laughed on the phone, that she reminded him of someone from the past. He snapped. Just like that. We didn't move. My mom said the danger was gone, but I never slept in that room again. I never opened that window, and I never visited another neighbor without asking first. Because sometimes monsters don't knock. They wait. They watch. And they already know where your bedroom is. I used to think the scariest things in the world came with loud noises or sharp teeth, things that roared, chased, or screamed. But the scariest thing I've ever seen came with a smile. And a pot of boiled corn. This happened when I was 13. I wasn't a little kid anymore, but I hadn't grown into anything solid either. My body felt weird. My voice was doing this in-between thing. And most days I just wanted to disappear into my hoodie and be left alone. My family didn't get that. Especially not my mom, who thought dragging me around with her and my aunt during spring break was a nice change of pace. That's how we ended up at the amusement park that day. It wasn't even a real park, just a dusty lot with rides that creaked like dying metal giants, bored workers who barely looked up from their phones, and booths that sold overpriced cotton candy under torn umbrellas. My cousin Mateo, a year older and 100 times more extroverted, immediately bolted to the bumper cars. I sat on a bench, sulking in the heat. My mom and aunt were busy talking about some neighbor's affair, or who borrowed someone else's Tupperware and never gave it back. Important grown-up things, apparently. I picked out a scab on my arm and kicked the gravel at my feet. That's when I smelled it. Warm, sweet, buttery, corn, boiled corn on the cob. I looked up, and there he was. A man with a metal cart positioned near the alley that separated the food court from the staff parking area. Steam curled from the pot he rested on top, fogging up the air above it. He had a checkered apron, a faded baseball cap, and a white shirt that clung to his back with sweat. It wasn't unusual to see food vendors, especially around parks. But this guy wasn't in the main row of carts. He was off to the side, alone. Still, the corn smelled amazing. "Mom?" I asked. "Can I get some?" She waved me off without even breaking her conversation. "Sure, get 4. 1 for each of us. Here." She shoved a few pesos into my hand. I bounced off the bench, grinning. It was a tiny moment of freedom. A treat. A chance to be the grown-up for a second and bring something back for everyone. I didn't know it, but I was walking right into something I'd remember forever. The vendor smiled as I approached. His teeth were yellow, but his eyes were calm, friendly. His posture relaxed. He seemed harmless. "You like corn, huh?" he asked, voice smooth. "Yeah. 4, please." He nodded, but didn't reach for the pot. Instead, he studied me. Not in a creepy way, at least, not obviously. But his eyes lingered on my face, then drifted to my shoulders, my hands, my shoes. Like he was taking inventory. I shifted, suddenly aware of the sweat on my neck. "Might not have enough in this pot," he said, tapping the lid. "But I have more in the van. Just around the corner." He pointed toward the alley behind him. I peered past the cart. The alley was narrow, tucked between 2 cracked concrete walls with air conditioners buzzing from above. It was dark, even in daylight, the kind of place that smelled like garbage juice and wet cardboard. At the end, I could see the tail end of a white van. No logos. No plates. Just a van. "I'll carry it," he added, lifting the pot. "Come with me." He didn't wait. Just turned and started walking into the alley. Everything in me hesitated. It didn't make sense. If he was a real vendor, why was he set up away from the crowd? Why didn't he have more in the pot? Why didn't he serve anyone else? Why me? Still, I followed. Not right away. I walked slow, my sneakers scraping the concrete. I told myself I could still see the park, still hear the music. If something felt wrong, I could run. But the alley swallowed sound. It was like stepping into a vacuum. No kids screaming. No bumper cars. Just my breathing. And his footsteps. He stopped halfway down. Set the pot down. Turned. "You don't have to tell your mom," he said casually. My stomach turned. "What?" He stepped closer. "You seem mature. More than most. I can tell." He smiled again. But this time, I saw something else behind it. Something hungry. I backed up. He stepped forward. You'd like what I've got back there, he said. It's special. His hand twitched. I didn't see a knife, not a rope, nothing visible, but I suddenly felt like prey. Cornered. My hand shook, and then I heard it. Hey, hey, a shout. Loud, sharp. It was my aunt. I turned and saw her running. Phone in one hand, flip-flops slapping pavement, eyes wide with fury. The man flinched. Didn't speak. Didn't yell. He turned, slammed the trunk of the van shut, jumped into the front seat, and sped off without another word. Gone in seconds. Back in the car, I sat in silence. My mom was pale. She couldn't stop staring at me. I kept replaying it in my head. The pot, the van, the alley, his smile. That smile. I saw him watching you from the cart, my aunt said quietly. He wasn't looking at anyone else. Not once. I didn't sleep that night. A week later, my mom showed me a news article. No name. No photo. Just a warning. A man posing as a food vendor had attempted to lure children in 3 separate incidents. He targeted kids alone. He always asked them to follow him to a van. He never left prints. Never gave a real name. No arrests had been made. But someone got a photo of the van. It was the same one. White. Dirty. No plates. I never ate corn again. And sometimes, when I walk past a street vendor, I still catch a whiff of steam and butter and metal and feel my legs go cold. Because I know what it smells like. I know what he smelled like. And every time, I wonder. What would have happened if my aunt hadn't looked up? What was in the back of that van? And how many kids never made it back from the alley? There are places in the world that don't want to be found. They don't show up on maps. They vanish when the sun rises. And if you do find them, they don't always let you leave the same. This is the story of the cave that wasn't there until it was. I grew up in a nowhere town in southern Arizona. Dirt roads, cactus fields, and a horizon so flat you could watch your shadow walk away for miles. The kind of place where you made your own fun or you went stir crazy. My friends and I were the exploring type. There were 4 of us. Me, Nate, Jesse, and Ray. We called ourselves the Lost Boys, even though Jessie was a girl and none of us had any business being as bold as we were. When we weren't biking around town, we were hiking in the canyons or sneaking into old mines left over from the Silver Rush. Most of them were sealed up, but sometimes, just sometimes, we'd find one that wasn't. That's how we found the cave. It was late June, the start of summer, the heat thick enough to choke. We were hiking through the wash behind an old ranch that had burned down years ago. We'd never gone that far before. Too many rumors, skinwalkers, ghost dogs, disappearing hitchhikers. We thought it was all BS. Until we saw the opening. It wasn't like the other caves. Those were rocky, obvious, carved into the hills like scars. This one was smooth. Hidden behind a curtain of brush, almost like the earth had split open on purpose. The air around it was cool. Too cool for a 104-degree day. I remember Ray saying, "It feels like it's breathing." And it did. We should have turned back. Instead, we lit our lighters and crawled in. The inside was wrong. I don't know how else to describe it. The air was thick with something, not dust, not moisture, just a kind of weight. The walls weren't stone. They were smooth and slightly damp, like clay that had never hardened. Our lighters barely worked. The flames flickered violently, even though there was no breeze. Every step echoed too loud. It felt like we were walking into someone's lungs. We kept going. Stupid, brave, 13-year-old logic. We were only planning to go in for 5 minutes. 10, tops. But time moves differently in places like that. At some point, we started hearing things. Soft tapping, like fingernails on glass. And voices not whispering, but just below the edge of understanding. You could feel the words but not hear them. Like something was speaking directly into the backs of our skulls. Nate was the first to get scared. He started turning around every few seconds. "Did one of you touch me?" We hadn't. Jessie grabbed my arm. "Let's go," she whispered. Now. But we'd come so far. And then we found the chamber. It opened up into a circular room, perfectly round. The floor dipped slightly in the middle, like a bowl. There were no markings, no stalactites, no signs of erosion or life. Just emptiness. And in the center, a hole. Not a big one. Maybe 3 feet wide. Perfectly round. Pitch black. Too dark even for the flame to touch. Nate stepped toward it. "Don't," Ray said. Seriously. But Nate crouched anyway, staring down into it. "I think there's something in there," he said. "I think." Then he jerked back. Screamed. We pulled him away. His hand was bleeding. Thin red slits across his palm, like paper cuts but deeper. Something grabbed me, he said. It grabbed me. That's when we ran. The way back was chaos. Every turn looked wrong. The walls seemed closer. The air was buzzing. And the voices, those impossible, wordless voices, grew louder, like they were angry now. Our lighters were dying, one by one, until only mine was left, and even that flickered with each step. We stumbled, clawed, and crawled until finally, we saw the light from the entrance. We burst out into the sun like rats from a drain, and everything was silent. Still, except the sky was different. The sun wasn't where it should have been. We'd gone in around 3 p.m. It was nearly sunset. We'd only been inside for maybe 15 minutes, but 3 hours had passed. No one said a word. We just walked home. We agreed not to tell anyone. Nate's hand eventually healed, but the scars stayed, thin, perfect lines like someone had carved symbols into his flesh, and they'd faded into nothing. A week later, we tried to go back. We hiked the same trail, checked every turn, searched every brush wall. The cave was gone. Not just hidden, gone. We returned every summer for the next 2 years. Never found it again. But sometimes, when the heat is heavy and the sky turns that strange pink-orange before sunset, I swear I feel it watching, waiting. And every now and then, when I close my eyes to sleep, I hear those voices again, still speaking, still waiting for someone to listen. You ever drive so far off course, it feels like the road itself is making decisions for you? That's what it felt like that night. Like we weren't lost by mistake, but led there. And I still don't know how we got out. This happened in 1998, back before smartphones, GPS, or Reddit threads about weird backroad cult towns. It was me, Chris, and Ben. We were 17, fresh off our last day of high school and high on the freedom of summer. We decided to take a weekend road trip to this water park in southern Missouri, 3 hours out. No big deal. We printed directions from MapQuest, burned a couple CDs for the ride, and hit the road. The park was great. Slides, funnel cakes, sunburns, you name it. But the weird part came after. The sun was dipping low when we packed up to leave. Chris insisted he remembered a shortcut, some country road that looped back toward Arkansas and shaved off 40 minutes. That was the first bad call. By 8:15 p.m., we were surrounded by fields and woods. No lights, no signs. The pavement had turned to gravel, then to dirt. This isn't on the map, Ben said, flipping through the papers in his lap. No, Chris said. It's fine. Look, we're still heading west. We'll hit a highway any minute. But we didn't. And just as the last shred of sunlight drained from the sky, the engine light blinked on. Fuel low. I remember laughing, just nervously, because this was the kind of stuff that happened to other people. Not us. Not until that night. We crested a hill and saw a flicker of fluorescent light in the distance. A gas station, an actual, honest-to-God gas station. It looked old. One of those prefab buildings with faded logos and a single pump. The kind of place that feels stuck in time. But it was open. The open sign buzzed weakly in the window. Chris pulled in while Ben and I got out to stretch. I could hear frogs and cicadas, but no other cars. No traffic. Just us. I walked inside first. The place smelled like old coffee and rubber. Behind the counter stood a man in his 60s, bearded, hunched, wearing suspenders over a stained shirt. He looked up and smiled way too wide. "Well, hello there," he said. We nodded awkwardly. "Pump's out front. Go ahead and fill up. But you best make haste. It's buffer night." Ben and I exchanged a glance. "Sorry, what?" I asked. He leaned in slightly. "Buffer night. You don't want to be out too long." I waited for him to laugh, to crack a smile like it was some kind of local joke. But he just stared. While we paid for the gas and asked for directions, 2 people came out from the back. A man and woman, both maybe in their 50s. Pale, thin, and dressed like they'd walked out of a farm catalog. Their eyes locked onto us like radar. "Are these the guests for tonight?" the woman asked, tilting her head. "No," the old man said. "Just some lost children." The way he said children made my stomach twist. Like he knew exactly how young and helpless we were. They both nodded. Then, in perfect unison, they said, "You best make haste. It's buffer night." That was it. I grabbed Ben's arm and whispered, "We need to go." Outside, Chris was already in the driver's seat, white-knuckled, staring straight ahead. "Dude, go," I said as we jumped in. He floored it. We didn't ask him anything until we'd driven 2 miles. What happened? Ben finally asked. Chris didn't look at us. There were guys across the street, he said. 3 of them. Just standing there. Watching me. Not moving. And they had knives. Big ones. My throat went dry. Are you serious? I swear to God. They didn't blink. We drove fast. No music. No talking. Just the wheels crunching gravel as we followed the old man's directions. Right turn after the dead tree, straight through the dip, left at the broken fence. And somehow, it worked. We had asphalt. Then a sign for I-49. We didn't speak again until we were 20 minutes down the interstate. Later, we tried to find that town on the map. We never could. We traced the road a dozen times, nothing. The gas station didn't show up on satellite. Not even a scar on the land where it should have been. Buffer night? Nothing on Google. Nothing in folklore books. It doesn't exist anywhere. But I remember the way they said it. The look in their eyes. The hush in the trees around us. I don't know what buffer night is, but I know we barely made it out of it. And some part of me wonders if, one year, we won't be so lucky. People always talk about the fear of drowning, the thrashing, the burning lungs, the slow fade into black. But nobody ever talks about what it's like to be held underwater. To feel the weight of someone else's hands pushing you down while the light slips further away. It happened when I was 8 years old, and for the longest time, I didn't even understand what had really happened to me. Not fully. Not until years later, when I woke up in a sweat, remembering the smile on his face while I choked beneath the surface. That summer was hot, even by our small-town Texas standards. My dad had finally managed to get a few days off, and decided we'd spend it at Lake Whitmore, one of those brown water lakes dotted with rowboats, a rusted dock, and a beach made mostly of pebbles and broken glass. It was a weekday, so there weren't many people around. A few families. Kids splashing. The usual. My dad set up a small folding chair a few feet from the water's edge and handed me a fruit juice box before plopping down with a fishing magazine. Don't go deeper than your knees, he said. I'm watching. I nodded. I always nodded. But I didn't always listen. I was bored. Wading in the water. Splashing the shallows. Poking at the mossy rocks with my toes. Then I saw him. He was a little older, maybe 11 or 12. Blonde. Tan. He had that older kid confidence that made you want to impress him. He was floating a few meters out, his head bobbing above the surface. You alone? He called out. I shook my head. My dad's right there. He glanced toward shore and waved like he knew exactly where to look, then swam in closer. Want to play? I hesitated. I'm not supposed to go out past my knees. Why not? I can't swim that good. He smiled. I can teach you. It's easy. You just float and kick. Here, come on. I looked back. My dad was flipping a page in his magazine. He wasn't watching. The boy drifted backward, arms spread like wings. You're brave, right? He said. Or are you scared? That stung. So I took a step forward, then another, and then my feet couldn't touch anymore. At first, he was laughing, encouraging me. See? Not so bad, right? I was nervous, flapping my arms, trying to copy him. But then something changed. He swam behind me fast, and the next thing I knew, my head was underwater. Not gently, not like a playful dunk. Forced. 2 hands on my shoulders, pressing down. I panicked, flailed. My mouth opened and filled with lake water. Muddy, warm. It burned my nose. I tried to scream, but my voice stayed in my throat. Above me, I saw ripples and a blurry shape, still holding me. It felt like forever. In reality, it was probably seconds. But seconds are a lifetime when you're 8 and drowning. I remember thinking, this is it. I'm going to die here, and my dad will never know what happened. Then everything shifted. I felt a jerk. Hands grabbing my arm, yanking me up. Air exploded into my chest as I broke the surface, coughing, gasping, sobbing. My dad. He held me like I was glass. I remember his voice in my ear, sharp, furious, terrified. What happened? Who did this? But when I looked around, the boy was gone. We left immediately. My dad wrapped me in a towel, threw our stuff into the truck without a word, and drove like hell down that gravel road. I cried the whole way home. Later that night, I asked him why the boy did it. He didn't answer, but I could see it in his eyes, the same question tearing him up inside. The next day, we went back. We drove around the lake parking lots, asked people, described the boy. Nobody knew him. Nobody remembered seeing him. No parents. No siblings. Nothing. It was like he'd never been there. Years passed. I tried to forget. I told myself it was a game gone wrong. A misunderstanding. Maybe he was playing and didn't realize I couldn't breathe. But deep down, I knew. There was no fear in his face. No panic when I sank. Only satisfaction. I'm 27 now. Last summer, I took my niece to a different lake, safer, clearer, with lifeguards. I stood ankle deep while she splashed in her floaties. And that's when I saw him. Not a kid anymore. An adult. Late 20s. Same blonde hair. Same smile. Standing just outside the roped swimming zone. Staring. Watching the kids. He didn't see me, but I saw him. And in that moment, everything came back. The water, the hands, the look on his face when he pushed me under. I left immediately. Haven't been back since. I didn't tell my niece. Didn't tell my sister. What could I say? There's a man here who tried to drown me 20 years ago, and now he's watching your kid? They'd think I was crazy. But I know what I saw. And I know what he is. If drowning is the perfect crime, then maybe he's done it again. Maybe he's still out there. Still waiting. Still smiling. And still looking for another brave little kid to follow him into the deep. People always say it's strangers you have to watch out for. But I learned the hard way that it's the ones who know your name, who know your laugh, your secrets, your favorite hiding spots, that's who you should be afraid of. Because they know exactly how to get close before they cut deep. Jake was my best friend from the time we were 5. We met on the monkey bars in kindergarten. He dared me to jump off the top. I scraped my knees bloody and cried, and instead of teasing me like the other boys, he sat beside me and said, "Looks cool. Like battle scars." I smiled through the tears. That's all it took. We were inseparable after that. The kind of kids who finished each other's sentences, made each other's lunch trays into battlefields, built forts out of trash cans and cardboard. We had this secret language of inside jokes and nicknames no one else understood. When my mom got sick and my dad stopped coming home as often, Jake was there. When Jake's older brother got arrested and their house went quiet and mean, he'd show up at my window at night just to sit and talk about space or ghosts or what we'd do when we were grown. But by the time we hit high school, things started to change. Jake changed. At first, it was small stuff. He stopped coming over. Started skipping school. His clothes changed, then his friends. Older guys with cars and loud voices who smelled like motor oil and ashtrays. They'd loiter near the edge of the school parking lot, sneering at teachers, leering at girls. Jake always stood just a step behind them, silent, watching, like he was still himself, but under a mask. I'd see him around town sometimes, leaning against walls, eyes shaded by a hoodie, half lost in a world I couldn't follow him into. We'd make eye contact, and for a moment I'd see a flicker of recognition. Then it'd be gone. I kept telling myself he was just figuring things out. We all were, right? But looking back now, I think he was testing how far he could fall without anyone trying to catch him. It was March when it happened. A Saturday night. Cold, windy, the sky stretched tight with clouds that looked like bruises. I had just finished a shift at the used bookstore downtown, my part-time job after school. We'd stayed late for inventory, and the buses had already stopped running. It was a 15-minute walk to my house. Quicker if I took the alley shortcut behind the closed tire shop. I'd walked it 100 times, lit only by a single flickering street lamp, the ground lined with broken bottles and puddles of motor oil. A place that stank of gasoline and dead leaves. I put my headphones in, zipped my jacket up, and headed in. About halfway down, I felt it. That itch on the back of your neck when someone's watching. I paused, took out one earbud. Footsteps. Close. I turned around, expecting to see a jogger, a homeless guy, anything. But instead, I saw 3 figures emerging from the shadows behind a dumpster. Hooded. Silent. Moving like predators. "Hey," one of them said, voice low. "Got the time?" I didn't answer. My body had already made the decision my brain hadn't caught up with. I ran. I made it maybe 30 feet before someone grabbed my hood and yanked me backwards so hard I hit the pavement. I tried to scream, but a knee pressed into my chest. A knife appeared, gleaming under the streetlight. Wallet. Phone. Now. One of them rifled through my coat. Another stood behind, shifting like he was keeping watch. And then I heard it. My name. Not shouted. Spoken. Soft. Alex. I froze. No one had said it yet. Not the guys with the knife. Not the one pressing into my ribs. Just him. The one in the middle. The one I hadn't looked at yet. I turned my head, and my heart nearly stopped. It was Jake. Hood up. I shadowed. Mouth set in a grim line. He didn't look angry. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired, like he didn't want to be there, like he was already somewhere else in his mind. But he knew me. He'd said my name, and in that moment, I saw it. The recognition, the guilt, and beneath that something darker, a kind of cold acceptance, like he'd made peace with doing something terrible. The guy with the knife glanced at him. Jake. Jake shook his head slowly. Not this one. A beat passed. You serious? The one holding me asked. Jake didn't move. Not this one, he repeated, voice firmer. The pressure on my chest eased. The guy with the knife hesitated, then stepped back, frustrated. The third one cursed and kicked a bottle. Jake didn't even look at me, just turned and walked back into the dark. The others followed, and I lay there on the cold pavement, shivering, heart pounding like a drum in my throat. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't tell my parents. Didn't tell anyone. Because what do you even say? My childhood best friend tried to mug me and only stopped because he realized it was me? There's no good version of that story. No way to make it make sense. Weeks passed. Then one night, I saw him again. At a gas station 2 towns over. I was getting a soda. He was buying cigarettes. He saw me. Nodded. Like nothing had happened. Then he said, "You're lucky." Why? I asked, before I could stop myself. He stared at the floor. Because I remembered your name. And then he walked away. I don't know where Jake is now. Some say he moved to another city. Some say he got locked up. Others say he's dead. All I know is that night still haunts me. Because I saw the line he was willing to cross. And I realized how thin that line really is. One more step. One more second. If he hadn't looked up, if he hadn't remembered my face, my name, my laugh, I might not be here. And what keeps me up isn't just what almost happened. It's knowing how many people he didn't recognize, how many names he didn't remember, and how easy it is to forget you were ever someone's best friend. You don't forget the feeling of being watched. Even if nothing's there, no noise, no movement, your body knows. Your skin knows. That kind of fear burrows deep. It grows roots. And some nights, it still wakes me up. It started when I was 10. We lived in a rundown duplex at the edge of a cul-de-sac. My mom, me, and our cat, Molly. My bedroom was in the basement, tucked half underground with one of those small rectangular windows set high in the wall, just above the flower bed outside. At first, I thought the tapping on the glass was the wind, or maybe branches swaying, but it always happened around the same time, 11:30 p.m. The first few times, I just buried my head under the blankets. Then one night, I opened my eyes at the exact moment the tapping stopped, and I saw him. A man, just a silhouette, crouched outside the window, watching me. I couldn't breathe. I stared so long, my eyes burned. But he didn't move, just knelt there, his face inches from the glass. I couldn't scream, couldn't even sit up. After what felt like hours, I blinked, and he was gone. I told my mom the next morning. She brushed it off. Bad dream, she said. You've been watching too many scary movies. I hadn't, but what was I supposed to say? So I let it go. A week later, it happened again. This time, I saw more. The man had a flashlight. He swept it across my room, briefly landing on my face. That's when I saw his face. His eyes were dark. Too dark. Like pits carved into wet clay. His skin was pale, and there was something off about the way he smiled when the beam touched me. Like he wasn't surprised I was looking. Like he wanted me to see him. That night, I didn't sleep at all. In the morning, I begged my mom to come look outside. She sighed, humoring me. We stepped out, rounded the corner to my window, and she stopped. The flower bed was ruined. The grass outside the window was flattened, matted down with prints. The soil was torn up in long, ragged scrapes, like someone had dragged a tool through the dirt. That wasn't wind. It wasn't a dream. Something or someone had been out there, watching, and trying to get in. From that moment, everything changed. My mom was freaked out, but we were broke. We couldn't just pack up and leave. She started locking every door twice, put a broom handle in the backsliding door, kept the porch light on all night. And I stopped sleeping. That feeling, the pressure of eyes on my back, became constant. The only relief I had was my best friend, Kylie. She lived next door, and we were inseparable. The kind of kids who spent more time in each other's houses than our own. We'd ride bikes, knock on neighbors' doors asking for candy, even sneak into the backyard of an old lady 3 houses down. That woman, We called her Miss Edie, was the sweetest person I'd ever met. She smelled like cinnamon and wore those soft, floral housecoats. She always had Twinkies and Hostess cupcakes, and she never told our moms how often we visited. She also had a grown son. We only saw him once, briefly. Miss Edie introduced him as Jimmy, said he had just gotten out of the hospital. He didn't talk, just nodded. I didn't think anything of it. A few days later, my mom dragged me to the grocery store. We were only gone for 15 minutes. When we came back, we couldn't even get to our house. Police tape, news vans, a helicopter circling overhead. Our quiet street looked like a crime scene from a movie. And it was. While we were out, Kylie had been sitting on her porch, chatting on her phone. She saw someone walk past. It was Jimmy. Apparently, he thought she was making fun of him. He disappeared for a few minutes, then came back with a butcher knife. Kylie saw him coming. She ran inside, locked herself in the bathroom. She called the police. Thank God she still had her phone in her hand. But her mother, she didn't make it to the door in time. Jimmy broke in and stabbed her mom. Not once, not twice, but over 20 times. By some miracle, she survived. Barely. I remember sitting in front of the TV with my mom that night, watching the news, trying to make sense of it, seeing the mugshot of the man who'd done it, and feeling every organ in my body go cold. It was him, the man outside my window, the flashlight, the eyes, the man who had crouched in the dark and watched me sleep. He was Miss Edie's son. We'd met him. We'd talked to him. He'd known me. The worst part? He had been watching us for weeks. He had made a habit of it. My mom found out later, through police reports, that he had only been out of prison for a month. He wasn't supposed to be living with his mother, but no one checked. No one warned us. And we were just two dumb kids playing in his shadow. We didn't move right away. We couldn't afford to. I slept with the lights on, the blinds closed. My mom never left me alone. Eventually, time dulled the edge of the fear. But I never forgot. Because every night, when the house gets quiet, I still hear that soft tapping. Even when I know it's not real. Even when I know he's behind bars. I still check that window. Because I can't help but wonder. What if next time, the window does open? And what if the man watching me isn't a stranger at all? There's a difference between being alone and feeling alone. I learned that when I was 7 years old, on a day so hot the sidewalk shimmered, and I made a choice that I've regretted ever since. A choice that led me to a path I should have never walked. We lived in a small Texas town, one of those places where nothing ever happens until it suddenly does. Everyone knew each other by name, or at least by truck and mailbox. Our neighborhood was made up of older folks and working families. It was quiet, safe. At least, that's what I thought back then. Usually, I walked home with my older brother and sister. We stuck to the same route, turned left at the grocery store, cut through the back alley behind the church, hopped the tiny creek near Mrs. Andrews' garden. It was our secret way, tucked out of sight, shaded by trees, just the right mix of adventure and routine. But that day, I was alone. I don't remember why. Maybe one of my siblings stayed after for tutoring. Maybe I had a dentist appointment. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that for the first time ever, I walked that shortcut by myself, and someone was waiting. It was sweltering, one of those afternoons where the heat makes everything look like it's melting. The cicadas were deafening. My backpack bounced against my back as I skipped along, pretending I wasn't nervous. I passed by the first row of empty houses, most of them for sale or boarded up. This part of the neighborhood had always been a little forgotten, but it felt different when I was alone. Bigger, emptier. That's when I saw him. Just up ahead, past the tall grass and rusted fence. A man, standing perfectly still on the sidewalk. He wasn't doing anything. Wasn't smoking, or talking on the phone, or even walking, just standing there. Watching. I slowed. He wore a dusty ball cap, jeans, and a loose button-up shirt. Nothing remarkable. But something about him was wrong. His face was too still. His eyes didn't blink. Then he smiled and stepped toward me. My legs froze. My brain screamed to turn around, but I was paralyzed. "You lost?" he asked, voice low and calm. "It's a hot day for walking." I shook my head. He kept walking. Slow, steady. "Where's your mom?" he asked. I didn't answer. He stepped off the sidewalk, into the weeds, cutting off the path ahead. "You look thirsty," he said. "I live just around the corner. Got cold soda and air conditioning. You want to cool off?" He gestured over his shoulder to one of the boarded-up houses. Every instinct in my tiny body flared red. I took a step back. That's when his smile changed. It dropped, flattened. His eyes darkened, and he took another step forward. "Don't be rude," he said. "I'm just trying to help." I turned and ran, fast as I could, backpack slamming my ribs, lungs burning. I didn't look back, didn't dare. I tore through the tall grass, veered off the shortcut, and cut across the old drainage ditch, scrambling up the bank, knees scraped and bleeding. I didn't stop until I saw the main road. Cars, people, noise. I stumbled into the parking lot of the corner gas station and collapsed on the sidewalk, sobbing, gasping. One of the workers came out, asked what was wrong. I couldn't even speak, just shook my head and pointed back toward the shortcut. When my mom picked me up, I told her everything. She called the police. They found nothing. No man, no house like I described. They searched the abandoned houses nearby, but said no one had been squatting there, no food, no signs of life. They chalked it up to a stranger passing through. But I know what I saw. I saw him. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing his face in my window. I begged my siblings never to take that shortcut again. My mom started walking us to and from school, gripping our hands a little too tightly. Eventually, life went back to normal. The town stayed quiet. But I never forgot. 10 years later, I was back home from college, helping my mom clean out the attic. I found an old newspaper clipping tucked inside a box labeled "Keep." It was dated 2 weeks after that day. Local boy found dead in drainage ditch. Suspected heat stroke. No foul play suspected. But I remembered that ditch. I remembered running through it. And I remembered the man, standing between me and the end of the path. They say kids imagine things. That fear distorts memory. Maybe. But sometimes, I still walk past the place where that shortcut used to be, now overgrown with weeds and concrete barriers. And I swear I see a figure standing just at the edge of the trees, smiling, waiting, still watching. Some moments split your life in two. There's everything before you see the danger and everything after. And for me, that moment was served with the scent of boiled corn and rusted metal. It was the spring break of 2007, and my family had driven 3 hours to spend the day at Luna Grove Park, a sprawling, half-forgotten amusement area that hadn't changed since the 80s. It was charming in a peeling paint and rattling bolts kind of way, but it was tradition. Every spring, we went with my aunt and cousin for cheap thrills and cotton candy headaches. I was 12, that weird, in-between age where you're old enough to want some independence, but young enough that adults still say, "Wait here." My cousin Julian was 13, smug with his extra year of life, and constantly reminding me of it. While he darted off to the bumper cars, I stuck behind with my mom and aunt, who had claimed a wooden bench under the shade of the Ferris wheel. My flip-flops smacked the pavement as I tried to distract myself from boredom, watching families pass, catching snippets of laughter and whining. Then I smelled it. Boiled corn. Sweet, buttery, and floating on the wind like a memory. It made my stomach growl. I scanned around, and there he was. A man setting up a large, dented tin pot at the end of a narrow alley just outside the park's edge. I tugged on my mom's sleeve. "Can I get some?" She looked up. "What?" "Corn. Over there. I've got my own money." She squinted, then shrugged. "Okay. Get 4, 1 for everyone." She handed me a tin. I grinned, already tasting the hot kernels on my tongue. The alley was short, lined with dumpsters and faded murals. The man was standing beside a folding table with a small cash tin and a battered cooler. His pot was huge, steaming gently. He wore a baseball cap pulled low and a striped shirt stained with grease. "4, please," I said, shyly. He looked at me, really looked. His eyes did a slow scan from my hair to my shoes and back again. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A knowing one. He tapped the side of the pot with a spoon. "Ah, no can do," he said. "Only got 1 left in here. Just sold the rest." I blinked. "But you just set up." He shrugged. "I've got more in the car," he said, jerking his thumb behind him. "Right over there. Just around the corner." I hesitated. The parking lot was just a few feet away. I could still hear the park's music playing, the dull roar of rides. He leaned in. "Be quick. I'll give you an extra 1 for free. You're sweet. Like my daughter." That should have made me feel safe. Instead, it made my stomach twist. But I was 12, and hungry, and too polite. I nodded. We walked side by side. He said nothing, just carried the empty pot in both hands, like a prop. As we passed behind the row of dumpsters, the noise of the park began to fade. The air got quieter. Still, he turned left toward the cars. "I just need to pop the trunk," he said. I followed, clutching the $10 bill like it could protect me. That's when I noticed something. There was no car. The lot was empty, except for a single rusted van near the tree lane. He headed straight for it. My heart started pounding. "This yours?" I asked, my voice thin. He didn't answer. Just set the pot down beside the van and opened the trunk. Empty. No cooler. No corn. Just an old sheet and a length of rope. I froze. He turned, saw my eyes on the rope, and that smile vanished. He lunged. I screamed. Adrenaline hit like lightning. I spun, slipped, but scrambled away as fast as my legs would carry me. I didn't look back. Didn't hear if he called out. Just the slam of the trunk and the pounding of my blood in my ears. I barreled through the alley, burst into the park, and ran straight into my mother's arms, sobbing. Security was called. So were the police. By the time they arrived, the man and the van were gone. The security footage showed nothing. The cameras near the alley hadn't worked in years. They told my mom the usual, "We'll look into it." But we both knew that meant nothing. Weeks later, we saw a local news segment. A man had been caught trying to abduct a girl from a park in another town. Different city. Same tin pot. I still can't eat boiled corn. I still see his eyes in my sleep. And I still wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't looked into that trunk? Or worse, if he had filled it with corn? Because maybe the pot wasn't empty because he ran out. Maybe it was empty because he didn't need bait anymore. Not when the trap was already walking right toward him. There's something deeply wrong about being seen when you think you're alone. Not watched in a casual, passing way, but seen. Studied. Remembered. That kind of gaze doesn't just observe, it claims you. And when you're a child, and it happens at night, it never leaves you. I was 10 the first time it happened. We lived in a rundown duplex on the edge of town, a single-story structure with flaking beige paint and overgrown bushes that scraped against the siding in the wind. My bedroom was in the basement, half buried, with a small rectangular window just above ground level. One of those weird half windows that feels more like a hole someone forgot to patch than something meant to bring in light. I used to love that room. Then the tapping started. At first, it was barely audible, like rain on glass. But it only ever happened on dry nights. And always at the same time, 2:14 a.m. I checked the digital clock again and again. It never varied. I told myself it was the wind. Then, the third night, I saw the light. Just a flash. A flicker through the blinds, like someone shined a flashlight through the glass. I sat bolt upright, heart hammering. My eyes adjusted, and I saw nothing. Nothing but darkness. Still, I told my mom the next morning. She laughed. Nightmares. You watch too many scary movies. I didn't argue. But that night, I didn't sleep. A few days passed. No tapping. I started to think maybe she was right. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe I had imagined the light. Then, one night, I made a mistake. I left the blinds open. Just a little. Just enough. I woke up to the sound of slow breathing. At first, I thought it was mine, but it was louder. Closer. I turned my head and froze. There was a face outside my window. Just the eyes and forehead, barely visible above the sill. Watching. Not moving. Not blinking. Just watching. I remember the way the moonlight caught his face. Pale skin. Dark eyes. A smile that didn't move his lips, but stretched beneath the skin like something wearing a man as a mask. I couldn't scream. I just lay there, paralyzed, until he finally backed away into the darkness like smoke evaporating. I told my mom again. This time, I begged her to believe me. She didn't. "Do you know how expensive it is to move?" She snapped. "You're scaring yourself over shadows." But I wouldn't sleep in that room anymore. I started dragging my blankets to the living room couch every night. She got tired of fighting me. Then, one morning, everything changed. It was bright out. Safe. Mom had a cup of coffee in hand, and I dared her to check the flower bed outside my window. She rolled her eyes, but humored me. That's when she went silent. Dead silent. I peeked around her, and saw it. The grass was flattened into a dead patch the size of a man's knees. Just in front of my window. The dirt around it was gouged. Not claw marks, tool marks. Like someone had tried to pry something open. Something that wouldn't budge. My window. Mom went pale. She didn't say anything. Just turned and locked the windows. Every single one. Then she started talking about moving. but we couldn't. Not yet. We were too broke. Around that same time, I got close with my neighbor Tessa. She lived next door with her mom, and we became inseparable. We'd run wild through the neighborhood like idiots, knocking on doors, asking for candy like it was Halloween in July. There was this old lady 3 houses down, Miss Edie, who always gave us snack cakes and let us hang out in her living room. It became our secret hideout. What we didn't know, what no one knew, was that her adult son had just gotten out of prison, and he was living with her. Weeks passed. No more tapping. No more lights. We almost forgot. Then it happened. One night, my mom shouted for me to come with her to pick up takeout. Just 15 minutes. Tessa stayed behind, lounging on her porch, chatting on the phone. When we came back, the street was blocked. Police tape. Helicopters. News vans. My mom parked 2 blocks away and ran. I chased her, heart pounding. Then I saw Tessa, wrapped in a blanket, sobbing into an officer's chest. And blood on the porch. So much blood. Later, I found out what happened. Miss Edie's son had walked past Tessa's porch. She had made a face, nothing unusual, just a goofy reaction to something on the phone. He thought she was mocking him. So he went inside, grabbed a butcher knife, and came back. Tessa saw him coming. She ran inside, locked the bathroom, called 911. Her mom was in the kitchen. She didn't see him in time. He stabbed her over 20 times. She survived. Barely. The next day, his mugshot was everywhere. My stomach dropped. It was him. The man at my window. The man with the flashlight. The man who watched me sleep. We had met him weeks earlier. In Miss Edie's house. He had seen us. And for some reason, some twisted, stalker logic, he picked me. Watched me. Waited. And when I wasn't there, he moved on. Tessa was just sitting in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't sleep with my blinds open anymore. Ever. Because I can still see his face when I close my eyes. And I still hear that soft, rhythmic tapping, 2:14 a.m., from the window that never opened. He couldn't get in. But that doesn't mean he stopped trying. You don't expect to find evil in a grocery store. It's too bright, too loud, too normal. But sometimes, horror doesn't wait in the woods or stalk you in the dark. Sometimes, it follows you under fluorescent lights, hiding behind plastic smiles and cheap soda cans. It was the first cold day of fall when it happened, the kind that bites through your clothes but doesn't quite warrant a jacket yet. My mom and I were doing our usual Sunday afternoon shopping trip at the local big box superstore. Nothing unusual. Just a mother-daughter routine we'd done for years. I was 17, old enough to drive, but still not old enough to say no to family errands. The place was half-packed. Halloween decorations clashed awkwardly with early Christmas stock. The scent of cinnamon-scented candles and raw meat hung in the air. My mom browsed the produce aisle while I pushed the cart, nodding along to whatever she was saying about spaghetti squash. That's when I noticed them. The first man, then 4 more, all standing at the edge of the aisle, watching us. At first, I thought I was imagining it. They weren't doing anything, just standing, staring. 5 men, dressed in dark hoodies and cheap jeans. All about the same age, mid to late 20s, maybe early 30s. All with the same expression, neutral, flat, too still. I nudged my mom. Don't look now, but those guys are... I know, she cut in, voice tight. I've seen them too. She grabbed my wrist, firm. We're not going to panic. Just keep walking. We took a detour through the bakery, then doubled back to cleaning supplies. They followed, always one aisle behind. Never speaking, never picking up items, just mirroring us. I tried to rationalize. Maybe they were loss prevention. Maybe they thought we looked suspicious. But why would security come in a group of 5? Why were they always silent? And why did one of them, the one with the stained ball cap, keep smiling like he knew something we didn't? We sped up, turned corners faster, ditched half the shopping list. But every time we looked, there they were, lurking at the end of the aisle, pretending to glance at shelves. Not even pretending sometimes. Just watching. When we got to self-checkout, I felt a wave of relief. Crowds. Noise. Cameras. We'd be fine here. But as we scanned our items, I caught movement in the corner of my eye. They were behind us again. In the next lane. All 5. And they weren't buying anything. Just standing in a checkout lane, watching our total rise. My mom whispered under her breath, "Don't look at them. Just act normal." But I couldn't. Not when one of them walked forward, slowly, until he was right behind me. He had something in his hand. A Gatorade bottle. Empty. He made a show of examining it, then looked up at me with a wide, grotesque grin. His teeth were yellow. Rotten. He stepped past me and chucked the bottle into the overflowing trash bin beside our station, even though there was an empty bin next to his. He never broke eye contact. Then he turned, walked back, and rejoined his group. All five stared silently. We finished bagging our groceries. I grabbed the receipt with shaking fingers. My mom was already on her phone, muttering to my dad, asking him to meet us outside. Then she looked up and froze. They're moving. We turned. They were walking toward the entrance. Not fast, but deliberate. They weren't checking out, just leaving, waiting. We veered hard toward customer service. Two older women stood behind the counter. One of them saw our faces and immediately stepped forward. Everything okay? Hon? No, my mom said. Security. Now. A large man in a blue vest arrived within minutes. We explained. He listened, nodded, said it wasn't the first time. He walked outside to check. When he came back, his expression had changed. They were out there, he said, near the side exit, huddled out of sight. He paused. When they saw me, they scattered. Got in a van. Took off. A van. Of course it was a van. He walked us to our car. My dad met us halfway, furious and frantic. We left without incident. But the image stayed with me. Those 5 men. Those empty eyes. That smile. Later, I asked the store if they'd caught anything on the cameras. They hadn't. The footage glitched. Only that aisle. Only those few minutes. Like the store had blinked. I don't know what they wanted. I don't know how long they'd been watching us. But I know this. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears cheap sneakers and a Gatorade grin. And sometimes it walks just one step behind you, waiting for you to stop looking. You don't expect your life to change in the middle of a train ride. Especially not on a sleepy afternoon in early fall, when the air smells like wet leaves and everything feels like it's winding down. But sometimes, evil doesn't kick down your door or hide in the shadows. Sometimes, it sits quietly across from you. And then it smiles. I was on my way to Frankfurt to visit an old friend I hadn't seen in years. The train was barely half full, most of the booths empty, save for a few passengers lost in books or scrolling through their phones. It was the kind of ride where you slip into a daze, lulled by the soft rumble of the tracks. I found a quiet booth and settled in, earbuds in, book in hand. That's when he walked in. At first glance, he looked harmless. An older man, maybe in his late 60s. Slightly hunched. Dressed in a tan trench coat that looked 2 sizes too big. He carried a large, worn leather bag and a thick notebook filled with what I thought were handwritten prayers or poems, scratched in a looping script that didn't seem to follow any clear language. He sat across from me without asking. Didn't say a word. Just opened his book and began to read. I tried not to stare, but there was something off. His skin was grayish, almost sickly. His eyes were deep-set, glassy. And his lips were constantly moving, silently, like he was whispering to something only he could hear. I put my earbuds back in and turned up the music. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. And then he looked up. I didn't notice at first, too caught up in my book. But when I did, I froze. He was staring at me. Not casually. Not the way someone glances at a stranger. This was different. His eyes were wide, unblinking. Studying. Judging. Like I was wrong somehow. Like I didn't belong in that seat. Or maybe in this world at all. Then he spoke. You brought it with you. I blinked. Excuse me. The storm. It followed you. He pointed out the window. Rain had started falling in sheets. The sky was almost black. You carry the dark inside you, he said. I smiled awkwardly. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. No, he whispered. You're the reason it's here. He reached into his bag and pulled out 2 small wooden crosses, held one in each hand like weapons, and began chanting. I stared, stunned. His voice grew louder, jagged syllables in a mishmash of German, Russian, and what sounded like Latin. Passengers nearby looked over but said nothing. Most turned back to their screens, pretending not to see. I tried to stand. He blocked my path with a cross. The devil inside you must leave, he growled. He started pressing the crosses toward me, jabbing the air like he was fencing with some invisible force around my head. My chest tightened. I looked around for help. Nothing. No staff. No conductor. Just strangers pretending this wasn't happening. He leaned closer, his breath sour and heavy. It's inside your eyes, he hissed. It's dancing in them. I yanked myself back. heart pounding. "Leave me alone," I said. He didn't listen. Instead, he took a crumpled ID card from his coat pocket and handed it to me. The photo was faded, the text in Cyrillic. Below it, scrawled in English, were the words, "Mentally unfit, supervised travel required." My blood went cold. That's when I knew. He wasn't just crazy. He was unleashed. Someone, somewhere, had let this man travel alone. And now he was here, with me. "I'll follow you," he said softly, like a promise. "Even if you run. Even if you hide. The devil always hides in pretty faces." I didn't wait for the train to stop. I grabbed my bag and bolted. I ran to the next car, locked myself in the bathroom, and stayed there for the remaining 40 minutes of the ride. Every bump of the train felt like a footstep. Every knock on the door made me jump. I could still hear his voice echoing in my ears. When we reached the station, I waited until the platform was crowded before stepping off. I scanned the crowd. He wasn't there. Maybe he'd stayed behind. Maybe. I met my friend in a coffee shop 2 blocks away. I didn't tell her the full story. Not then. But when I looked in the mirror that night, I noticed something. 2 faint marks, cross-shaped, pressed into my forehead where he'd hovered those damn relics. Like bruises from hands that never touched me. It's been years since that ride. But I still take the long route when I travel. And I still check every booth before I sit down. Because some evil doesn't hide in shadows. It smiles, reads quietly, and waits, with crosses in hand. You never think the worst danger will walk through your front door with a catalog and a coupon. But evil doesn't always show up in blood or shadows. Sometimes it smiles, asks if you're interested in chicken tenders, and uses your bathroom. It started when I was 8. Back then, it was just me, my mom, and my little sister Amber in a modest split-level house on a quiet dead-end street. My dad had left the year before, and things were tight. My mom worked long shifts at a clinic, so any deal or delivery service that made life easier was a blessing. That's how Mr. Brooks entered our lives. He was a delivery rep for one of those frozen food truck companies, the kind that sells bulk meals from a catalog and drops them off in a big white van that hums like a refrigerator on wheels. I remember the first time he came to our door. It was summer. The air was sticky, and Amber and I were playing with chalk on the driveway. He wore a light blue polo shirt tucked into pleated khakis and a pair of spotless white sneakers. He looked like someone's harmless uncle. He knelt down next to me and said, "You draw really nice houses." I smiled, because that's what you're taught to do with adults who speak softly and say nice things. He stood, waved at my mom, who was eyeing him through the screen door, and introduced himself as Mr. Brooks. Offered her some coupons, said he made regular rounds through the neighborhood. We got our first order the next week. It started off innocently. Mom bought chicken breasts, meatballs, frozen mac and cheese, the basics. Mr. Brooks would show up every 2 weeks, always smiling, always polite. He made small talk about school, complimented my mom's garden, and brought us little free samples now and then. I liked him. So did Amber. But things started to feel different after a few months. The first time he asked to use the bathroom, Mom hesitated. He was sweating summer heat again and said he'd had a long drive and nowhere to stop. She nodded, reluctantly, and pointed him toward the downstairs bathroom. I remember watching him walk past our hallway photos, past our living room, into that small bathroom by the laundry room. He was in there for almost 10 minutes. When he came out, he looked dazed. Not embarrassed. Not rushed. Just distant. And then he smiled again. "Thanks, sweetheart," he said to Mom. "You're a real lifesaver." He asked to use the bathroom every visit after that. Sometimes twice. Always downstairs. Sometimes we'd hear the faucet run for long stretches. Other times, he'd come out humming a song none of us recognized. Once, I passed by the door and thought I heard whispering. But when I leaned in, the sound stopped. It wasn't just the bathroom. He started giving Amber little gifts. Plastic rings, glitter pens, a pink notebook shaped like a kitten. "Just leftovers from my nieces," he'd say. Amber loved them. Mom was uneasy. She stopped leaving us alone when he came. She'd stand in the doorway, arms folded, watching his every move. Still, he smiled. Always smiling. The moment everything changed came one late afternoon in October. Amber and I were home alone. Mom was working a double. I was in the kitchen making grilled cheese, and Amber was upstairs. The doorbell rang. I opened it, and there was Mr. Brooks, smiling, holding a box of frozen pancakes. "Thought I'd drop off your favorites early," he said. I stared. "We didn't order anything," I said. "I know. just a little surprise. He stepped forward. Your mom home? I lied. Yeah, she's asleep. Night shift. He paused. His eyes scanned behind me. Then he said something I'll never forget. I bet Amber still likes her bubble baths, huh? My blood went cold. I never told him about her baths. Nobody did. I slammed the door, locked it, pulled the curtains. Then I ran upstairs and locked the bathroom, pulling Amber into the tub with me, both of us shaking. He didn't knock again, but when I looked through the upstairs window, I saw him sitting in his van at the end of the street. Just sitting, watching. When Mom got home, I told her everything. Her face drained of color. She didn't speak, just picked up the phone and called the company. But they said they had no employee by that name on our route, that no one should have been at our door that day, that Mr. Brooks had stopped working for them 3 months ago. We called the police. They came, checked the van tracks, pulled fingerprints from the door. Never found him. The food company confirmed the real Mr. Brooks had been let go for violating safety policies. They wouldn't say more, just that he'd been inappropriate during a delivery. A few weeks later, Mom changed all the locks. We stopped ordering frozen food. Amber stopped sleeping in her own room, and I never went near the downstairs bathroom again. Years later, when I was packing for college, I found something strange. Behind the toilet tank, tucked into the corner of the bathroom tile, was a folded note. Yellowed, moisture-stained. It said, "She's clean now. You're welcome." I didn't sleep that night, and I haven't since, because some men don't want to hurt you quickly. Some men want to wash you first. Some places don't want to be found, and when you do find them, they don't let go, not completely. They keep a part of you. Even if you walk out in one piece, something inside stays behind. I was 17 when we found the cave. It was the last summer before college, and me, Danny, and Lex had made a pact to do something memorable before we split off for different schools. Not drugs or anything illegal, just something weird. Something we talk about at reunions. Danny suggested a hike up to the old fire trail in Wicker's Hollow, a massive stretch of wooded hills on the edge of our small town. It wasn't a tourist spot. No signs. No rangers. Just deer trails, overgrown brush, and a lot of space to get lost. We packed snacks, water, and a few cheap lighters from the gas station. We had no idea what we were walking into. It took us 2 hours to reach the bluff. We followed a dried-up creek bed and used fallen trees to mark the path. It was hot, but under the canopy of trees, everything felt cooler, almost damp, like the air had weight. We reached a clearing where the cliffside curved inward like a bowl. That's where we saw it. The cave. It was weirdly smooth. No jagged rocks or roots, just a long oval mouth about 4 feet high, barely enough to crawl into. No graffiti, no trash, nothing. Like no one had ever been there. Or maybe no one ever came back. Lex hesitated. That doesn't look natural. Exactly, Danny grinned. Let's go. I should have said no, but I followed. Inside, it was cold. Unnaturally cold. We lit our lighters and crawled deeper, the flame barely pushing back the darkness. The walls were a matte gray, not rocky, but smooth, almost polished. They curved gently, like a tunnel bored by some machine that didn't exist yet. We joked at first, made fun of each other's crawling, tried to spook one another. But after a few minutes, the tunnel widened, and then we could stand. The chamber we entered was massive, circular, like a perfect dome. No formations, no critters, no moss. Just a single path that led deeper into the dark. And that's when it started to feel wrong. There were no sounds. No wind. No echo when we spoke. Our lighters flickered violently, though there was no draft. Lex was the first to notice. "What time is it?" she asked. I checked my phone. 1:36 p.m. We'd entered the cave around 1:20, but it felt like we'd only been inside for 5 minutes. Still, something told me we should turn around. We didn't. As we walked further, the tunnel shifted. The walls started to ripple slightly, like the stone itself had moved, then frozen mid-motion. It reminded me of scars, like the cave had healed from something. That's when we heard the breathing. It was faint, slow, rhythmic, not ours. It was coming from ahead. Danny laughed nervously. It's probably air shifting, but none of us believed it. We kept going. God knows why. Curiosity? Stupidity? A dare against the silence? The light from my lighter barely lit more than a few feet now. The air felt thick, not like humidity, more like pressure. I started to sweat, but the cold remained. I could feel the moisture on my skin, but I couldn't stop shivering. Lex suddenly said, "Did you feel that?" "What?" Something touched my hand. She held it up. There was a faint smudge on her wrist, like soot or ink. She looked at me, eyes wide. "Let's go back," I said. No one argued. The way back should have been easy. It wasn't. The tunnel had changed. The curves were tighter, the incline steeper. We were crawling again. Our knees scraped something sharp, though we never saw what. Danny said, "We didn't go this far down." Lex said, "We didn't go this way at all." And I realized I couldn't remember entering the large chamber, like it had been skipped or erased. My lighter died first, then Lex's. Then Danny sputtered, and the flame vanished. Complete darkness. And then, the whispering. Not words, not even language, just the shape of sound in your head. A feeling more than a voice. Like something brushing against your thoughts. Something trying to wear your mind like a glove. I screamed. I don't remember crawling. I don't remember climbing. Just motion. Motion and panic. We burst out of the cave mouth like animals being born. The sun nearly blinded us. The warmth hit like a slap. We were covered in dirt, sweat, and something black that smelled metallic. Lex was sobbing. Danny was silent. I looked at my phone. 4:44 p.m. We had been in the cave for over 3 hours. It felt like 20 minutes. We didn't speak on the walk back. Didn't joke. Didn't laugh. We made it home just before nightfall. Our parents were furious. Thought we ditched responsibility. We said nothing about the cave. 3 days later, we went back. This time with flashlights. Compass. Chalk to mark the path. We reached the clearing. The bluff was still there. The trees. The cliff wall. But the cave? Gone. Not covered. Not hidden. Just gone. Like it had never existed. We searched for hours. Nothing. No scrape marks. No air current. No crack in the stone. Just a blank wall. Like the earth had healed. Or had never been torn. That was 12 years ago. Lex doesn't talk about it. Danny moved 2 states away and never answers my calls. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see it again. That smooth tunnel. That impossible darkness. And the thing that breathed without lungs. And late at night, when everything is quiet, I swear I can hear it. Still whispering. Still waiting. They say drowning is peaceful. That once you stop struggling, your body just lets go. But they don't tell you what it's like before that, when someone else's hands are the reason you're underwater. When the ocean isn't a force of nature, but a choice someone made. That day, I learned that monsters don't always hide beneath the surface. Sometimes they invite you in. I was 6 the summer it happened. We were at Halford Beach, the quiet stretch where the sand burns your feet and the seagulls fight over fries. My dad had taken the day off for once, his face still half distracted by emails he checked behind his sunglasses. I loved it there. It smelled like sunscreen and salt. The water shimmered like it was trying to show off. I remember everything being louder than usual that day. The waves, the wind, the people, and him. He was maybe 9 or 10, blonde, taller than me. He wore faded swim trunks and a smile that felt too wide, like it had been stretched across his face instead of grown there. He was paddling around near the shallow breakers, watching the younger kids. Watching me. I was building a sandcastle by myself when he came over. He didn't say hi, just crouched and started adding a tower to my moat like we were already friends. "You should come swim," he said after a while. I shook my head. I'm not allowed past my knees unless my dad's watching. He looked toward my dad, dozing under an umbrella, headphones in. He's not watching. I didn't say anything. Then he added, "I can teach you. I'm really good. You just have to be brave." I wanted to be brave. I really wanted someone to be impressed by me. So I followed him. The water turned cold at my waist. He kept walking, then floated effortlessly onto his back, like the ocean had accepted him. "Come on," he said, grinning. "You're not going to drown. I won't let you." I stepped forward, then another. Soon, my feet weren't touching the bottom. I started to panic, thrashing, trying to stay above. That's when he grabbed me. It wasn't like in the movies. There was no warning, no struggle, no dramatic music. Just hands on my shoulders, pushing. Hard. Down. The salt water hit my throat like fire. I kicked. I flailed. But he was stronger. So much stronger. He held me under with both hands, his weight pressing me against the sea like I was trash he was trying to bury. I remember the sound more than anything. That horrible rushing silence, like screaming inside your own skull. The way the light above me broke and danced as my vision went fuzzy. I thought, I'm going to die here. I'm going to die at the beach. And then arms. Different arms. Pulling me up. Air slammed into my lungs like a car crash. I was coughing, gagging, screaming, clinging to my dad as he held me above the waves. I looked back once, and the boy was gone. Vanished. I cried the whole way home. My dad didn't yell. He didn't ask questions. He just kept repeating, I should have been watching. That night, I threw up 3 times and slept in my parents' bed. For days afterward, I refused to go near water. No showers. No bathtubs. Not even puddles. My mom took me to therapy. They said I must have panicked and imagined it. That the boy probably tried to help me, and I got scared. But I remembered his face. How come he looked? How deliberate it was. That wasn't a kid playing rough. That was a kid trying to kill me. A week later, we returned to Halford Beach. My dad said facing it would help me heal. I didn't want to go, but I didn't want to disappoint him either. We walked the shore together, holding hands, while I scanned every face around us. I never saw him, but I noticed something else. Other kids, about my age, wandering alone, looking lost. One of them, a little girl with curly brown hair, walked too far out. A boy older offered to help her swim. Same blonde hair. Same smile. I screamed. My dad looked, ran, pulled her out before she followed him. The boy? Gone again. I know what I saw. I know what he did. And I know this. That beach still hides him. Still feeds him. He doesn't grow old. Doesn't change. Just waits. And waits. For someone brave enough to follow him into the deep. Don't ever teach your kids to be brave in the water. Teach them to run from smiles that don't reach the eyes. Because not everything that looks like a boy is. People always imagine evil as obvious. A man in an alley. A scream in the night. Blood on a blade. But the kind of evil that haunts you forever doesn't wear a mask. It wears a smile. It makes polite conversation. It recommends books and sends you memes. Sometimes it takes years to realize it was ever there at all. This started back in 2016. I was freshly single. Single in that raw, scorched earth way where you don't know if you're lonely or just relieved to breathe on your own again. I wasn't looking for love, not really. But I missed the sound of someone else's voice. I missed laughing with another adult at 1 a.m. over dumb things. I missed being seen. So I downloaded OkCupid. I picked that one because it let you write full answers, long-winded essays on favorite books and deepest fears. It felt gentler. A little less about swiping and more about talking. I made a profile that was brutally honest. I was polyamorous, had a 5-year-old son, worked too many hours, and didn't want anything casual. Most men noped out after 2 messages. Except one. His username was EliWood87. He was 29. No bio pic of him flexing in a mirror, no cheesy pickup lines. Just a photo of him sitting in a garden, squinting into the sun, arms covered in dirt. His profile mentioned horror novels, introversion, and having an unhealthy attachment to ginger cats. His first message was about a podcast I'd mentioned. Weirdly, he said, I listened to the same episode while repotting my monstera. He was thoughtful. Well read. Not pushy. I responded. Over the next few weeks, we chatted every other day. He was surprisingly open. Said he worked as a handyman, mostly odd jobs and freelance labor. He lived about 45 minutes away and was helping raise his girlfriend's teenage daughter. Sort of a stepdad in training, he joked. He never once hit on me. He asked about my son, what I did for stress, what I believed in when it came to morality and people in pain. It was deeper than flirting. It felt like peeling an onion, one layer at a time. I started looking forward to our chats. He'd disappear for a day or 2 sometimes, then pop back in with a cat picture or a random, beautifully written paragraph about why autumn made him feel melancholy. We never called, never FaceTimed. He said he wasn't much of a phone guy, something about anxiety. I understood. I told him about my breakup, my rough patches with my ex, the guilt of raising a kid without feeling whole. He listened, genuinely. He told me about his past in vague terms. I made mistakes, big ones, but I've spent years getting better. Therapy, anger management. I hurt people when I was young. I won't lie to you about that. I appreciated the honesty. He never elaborated, and I never pushed. Why would I? We all have baggage. After a few months, he asked if I wanted to meet. I said no. Not because I didn't like him. I did. But life was chaotic. I had a son, a job, a mountain of responsibilities. Meeting someone from the internet felt like too much. He didn't get upset. No worries, he replied. Timing is everything. Maybe someday. He asked again 6 months later. Same response. Same reaction from him. We kept talking. There were strange moments, in hindsight. Subtle oddities. Once, I mentioned a local park I took my son to. A week later, he described a dream he had, set in that same park, down to the bench with the peeling green paint. Another time, he sent me a voice note of his cat purring, but in the background, there was this strange hum, like breathing, or whispering. I asked what it was, and he said, old pipes. This house creaks. But they weren't red flags. Not then. They were quirks. We talked for nearly 2 years. Then one morning, I woke up to a news alert on my phone. Man and girlfriend arrested in grisly murder of teenage girl. It would have been background noise, another true crime headline, if not for the flood of texts from my friend Casey. Is this him? Tell me you didn't meet up with this guy. His photo's going around Facebook. Look at this. I opened the link. Froze. There was a mugshot. Same face. A little more gaunt. Eyes flat. Familiar. It was him. Only now, he wasn't holding a cat. He was holding a booking number. The article laid it out in horrifying detail. His name was not Eli. He and his girlfriend had lured her daughter into the garage. They'd restrained her, tortured her, killed her. Together. He told investigators it was a fantasy he'd had for years. Something he thought he could keep buried. But it came back stronger. She'd helped him plan it. Hid the body in a plastic bin. Lied to police for 3 days. They only got caught because neighbors noticed the smell. I couldn't breathe. I went back through our messages. I saw it differently now. The time he said, some people have urges they never act on. Doesn't mean they aren't real. The time he said, there's a darkness in everyone. Some just wear it better. And worst of all, the message I'd brushed off as weird at the time. I think you'd be hard to hurt. You see people too clearly. That makes you dangerous. I called the police. I told them I'd been speaking with him online. They took my statement. Asked if I ever met up with him. If he'd ever tried to find me. He hadn't. At least. I don't think he had. But I started locking my doors differently after that. Started checking my rearview mirror more often. Started wondering how long would I have lasted. Because here's the part that won't leave me. I trusted him. I shared pieces of my life with him. I told him when I was home alone. I sent him pictures of my son. He knew everything. He never laid a hand on me. But he didn't have to. Because for 2 years, I smiled at a mask. And now I know what was underneath it. And I still don't sleep with the windows open. You know that feeling when you're being watched? Like something is pressing against your skin without touching you. Eyes, sharp and invisible, carving holes in the dark? I felt that every night for almost a year. And no one believed me. I was 10 when we moved into the house with the sunken basement. The kind where your bedroom window is just barely above ground level, set in one of those metal half circles with rust at the corners. It didn't open. It barely let in light. But to me, it was a portal. I'd press my face to it sometimes, watching worms wriggle through the dirt or ants crawl along the glass. That window felt like mine. Until it didn't. The first time I saw him, I thought I imagined it. Just a flicker of light, then a face. A flashlight beam cut across my ceiling, and when I sat up, I saw eyes. Cold, dark eyes. His face was flat against the glass, lips just barely moving. Watching. I screamed. My mom came running, of course. But by then, nothing was there. Just the reflection of my own breath in the glass. Bad dream, she said. That's what she said every time. But the dreams didn't stop. Because they weren't dreams. He kept coming back. Some nights he just stood there, outlined by the beam of his own flashlight. Other nights, I'd wake to the click of fingernails, or something sharper, scraping against the window. Once, I swear I heard breathing, slow and steady, as if it was inside the room. I started refusing to sleep in the dark. I'd pile toys in front of the window. I begged to switch bedrooms with my sister, but she said I was just being weird. So I told my mom, and she got mad. Enough with the nightmares, she snapped one morning. You're scaring your sister. There's no one outside. But then as she decided to prove it, she dragged me out to the backyard after breakfast, still in her robe and slippers. It had rained the night before, and the grass was slick and heavy. See, she said, nothing here. But then she stepped closer to the window. Her face changed. The grass, dead, crushed in a perfect arc around my window, as if someone had been pacing, just outside. Again, And again. The dirt had been clawed away, like someone was trying to dig through the concrete. And near the bottom edge of the window were long, gouging scratch marks. From something metal. My mom turned pale. We moved back inside without a word. That was the last time she said it was just a dream. We couldn't afford to leave right away. But she started locking every door twice. She bought a motion light and pointed it right at my window. I stopped sleeping altogether. Every sound became a threat. That was around the time I started spending most of my days with my best friend Maddie. She lived next door, just across the alley, and we were inseparable. Every spare hour was spent together, riding bikes, trading Pokemon cards, exploring the overgrown lots behind the neighborhood. And sometimes we'd visit her, Mrs. Albright. She was an elderly woman on our street who always had sweet snacks and little cans of soda. Maddie and I would knock on her door, and she'd greet us with a wide smile and a Hostess cupcake in each hand. "You girls are sunshine," she'd say. We'd sit in her living room and listen to her old music, flipping through photo albums while she told us stories that made no sense but felt magical. It was our secret, our little hideaway. One afternoon, my mom had taken me out for pizza. Just the two of us. A quick trip, 15 minutes, tops. But when we came home, everything was wrong. Police tape stretched across our street like a spider web. Flashing lights. Reporters. A helicopter circling overhead. I saw Maddie's house doors open. Cops everywhere. I dropped the pizza box. Ran. A neighbor stopped me before I could get closer. "There was an attack," she said. "Maddie's mom. She's alive, but barely." I couldn't speak. Couldn't process. Until later, when I learned everything. While we were gone, Maddie had been sitting on her front porch, talking on the phone. A man walked by, someone unfamiliar. New. Someone staying with his mother down the street. He saw her laughing. He thought she was laughing at him. He went home. Came back with a butcher knife. Maddie saw him coming. She ran inside. Locked herself in the bathroom. Called the police. But her mother, she was in the kitchen. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He stabbed her 27 times. She lived. Barely. Multiple surgeries. A miracle, they said. He was caught that night, not far from the neighborhood. His face was on every news channel. And when I saw it, my blood turned to ice. Because I knew that face. Those eyes. I'd seen them before. In the window. It was him. Mrs. Albright's son. We had met him once. Briefly. He'd been living with her after getting out of prison. I hadn't remembered him then. But now, I saw it. Clear as day. The man who watched me sleep. We never moved. My mom figured he was gone, and we were safe. But I never opened that window again. Never stepped foot near Maddie's house again. And Mrs. Albright? She moved out weeks later. Her house sits empty now. Overgrown. Silent. But sometimes, when the wind hits just right, I swear I hear that scraping again. Right outside the glass. They say the woods remember everything. But what if something wants to be forgotten? My brother and I were the kind of kids who grew up in dirt and pine. If we weren't at school or doing chores, we were in the forest, barefoot, sunburned, and convinced we were invincible. We lived in rural East Texas, miles from anything resembling a neighborhood. Our backyard stretched into an ocean of trees, wild trails, and sunlit clearings where you could imagine the world ended just past the tree line. We called it our forest, though it never belonged to us. Our parents warned us not to wander too far north, claimed that land belonged to a mining company, and it was dangerous. But my brother was 15, I was 10, and we were bored. So, naturally, we went where we weren't supposed to. It started like any other weekend. A plastic bottle for dip spit in my brother's hand, my beat-up sneakers crunching through underbrush. We were supposed to head to the edge of the big pasture and loop back, but the trail that day felt different, like it was pulling us forward. We pushed deeper, past the old creek where frogs croaked like broken engines, past the crooked hunting blind that hadn't been used in years, past anything familiar. The forest began to feel wrong, not in a horror movie way, just silent, too still, like the whole place had taken a breath and was waiting for something. That's when we found it. A clearing opened in front of us like a wound in the earth, unnatural and wide. The trees bending away like they were afraid of what stood in the center. It was a building, 2 stories, pure white, boxy, and without a single sign, surrounded by a tall chain-link fence topped with razor wire. The dirt road leading to the front gate was the only scar on the otherwise untouched woods. There were people inside. We saw them. Men in dark uniforms, moving crates. Others in white coats, speaking into radios. A low hum filled the air, like generators, or maybe something deeper, something alive. We crouched behind a fallen log at the edge of the clearing, hearts hammering, barely daring to breathe. "What the hell is this place?" I whispered. My brother didn't answer. His face was pale. He finally muttered, "We need to leave. Now." We sprinted back the way we came, lungs burning, the woods now thick with shadows and threat. When we finally burst out into the pasture behind our house, we didn't say a word. That night, he made me promise not to tell our parents. "They'd freak," he said, "and I'd get blamed for taking you out there." So I didn't, and we never went back. Years passed. Life moved on. My brother joined the military. I went to college out of state. The forest became just a memory, an echo of childhood. We talked about it sometimes, nervously laughing about the science building in the woods, chalking it up to some weird research outpost or government testing site. But it never sat right with me, especially after what I found last week. I'm 30 now, married, stable job, mortgage. I'm the kind of adult who scrolls Zillow for fun and complains about HOA fees. But something kept dragging my thoughts back to that day. So I pulled up Google Maps. I scanned the woods north of our childhood home. The pond was still there. The one with the higher rim of earth my brother had explained was made by a tractor. The trails were visible in satellite view, even after all these years. And then, the clearing. The place where the building should have been. There was nothing. Not just no building, no road, no fence, not even a break in the trees. Just unbroken forest canopy and untouched earth. Like it had never existed at all. I texted my brother. "You remember the building, right? The one in the woods." He called me within 30 seconds. "Of course I remember," he said. "I've never forgotten." I told him what I'd seen. Or rather, what I hadn't. He was quiet for a moment, then said something that made my skin crawl. I checked too. A few years back. Same thing. It's like it was erased. Erased. That word stuck in my head all night. Not demolished. Not decommissioned. Erased. The next weekend, I drove back. I told my wife it was nostalgia, that I just wanted to visit the old house. She smiled and said to take pictures. I didn't tell her I brought a compass, a flashlight, and a full charge on my phone. The forest looked the same, smelled the same, even. Damp earth, pine sap, distant birdsong. But when I crossed the old pasture and pushed into the deeper woods, something felt wrong. My GPS kept flickering. Compass spun lazily in my hand. The deeper I went, the harder it got to breathe, like the air was thicker somehow. And then, without warning, I hit the spot where I knew the clearing should be. Only this time, the trees were denser. Old-growth pines, thick and immovable, their roots too wide to have grown in 20 years. Moss-coated boulders. No sign of ever having been disturbed. I stood there for what felt like hours. And then I noticed something. A sound. Low. Buzzing. Like a dial tone beneath the earth. I turned back. Ran faster than I had in years. When I got to my car, the compass still wouldn't work. My phone battery had dropped from 82% to 1% in less than an hour. And when I looked at my photos, they were all black. Every single one. I don't know what we saw back then. A research facility? A black site? A memory that was never supposed to remain? But whatever it was, they didn't just abandon it. They buried it. Like a body. And I think it's still breathing. Waiting. And now it knows I came back. I sleep with a flashlight under my pillow now. And sometimes, late at night, I hear the hum again. Low. Distant. Like it's calling me home. There are sounds you never forget. Laughter. Screams. Gunshots. The last one came from a house that used to belong to the quietest family on our street. A house I could see from my bedroom window. We lived in a sleepy New England town. The kind where everyone knew your name, where trick-or-treating felt safe, and parents let their kids play outside until the streetlights flickered on. It was the kind of town people moved to when they wanted to escape the world. Our street was even quieter than most, lined with old colonial homes and thick oak trees. Just 10 families. Mostly elderly couples and young professionals with kids. My parents moved in when I was 5. By the time I was 8, I had a tight circle of friends and a bus stop just 2 houses down. And across the street was the Linzes, a mother and her 2 sons. The father wasn't around. Some whispered about a divorce. Others said he was military. I didn't care much either way. What I did care about was the youngest boy. His name was Adam, and he made me feel uneasy. Adam didn't smile like other kids. He had this weird, flat expression, eyes that darted too fast, like they were scanning for something. He never played outside. When we passed by his house on bikes or scooters, we'd sometimes see him staring through the second-floor window. He'd just stand there, staring, no blinking. I remember once, when we were walking back from the bus stop, he ran out of his house without a coat in the snow and shouted something I didn't understand. Then he ran back inside and slammed the door. That was the first time I noticed my mom grab my shoulder and steer me faster. The Linzes didn't come to neighborhood parties. The mom was polite, but off. She talked too fast, too loud, laugh at things no one else found funny. One year, she cornered my mom at a Christmas Eve party and started ranting about gun rights. Not just passionate, unhinged. She said her youngest was a genius and that he'd hacked into government systems before puberty. She claimed the CIA had visited their house once. Everyone laughed nervously and changed the subject. My mom didn't invite them again after that. We started noticing strange things. The street's Wi-Fi would flicker randomly, especially at night. Porch lights would dim, then brighten again. Sometimes, our phone would ring once in the middle of the night, then stop. We chalked it up to weather, to coincidence. But my dad joked, it's probably that computer kid across the street, spying on us. We laughed. We always laughed. Until the morning we didn't. It was winter. December. I was out of state, living with roommates in Philly, finishing college. My sister was in university. My younger brother still lived at home. That morning, I got a frantic call from my mom. They blocked the road, she said, out of breath. There are snipers on the driveway. They're evacuating houses. Something's happened, across the street. I asked what she meant, and that's when I heard my dad in the background. I heard the shots. This morning. I thought it was a hunter in the woods. It wasn't. News spread like wildfire. A school. Sandy Hook. Dozens dead. Children. Teachers. And the shooter? Adam Lynn. No. Not Adam. It couldn't be. The kid who used to stare out his window at night? The boy who never smiled? The genius whose mom bought him guns? But it was. The shooter lived across the street. The boy with the blank eyes. They said he shot his mother first. At home. Right across from ours. They said she was asleep. I don't remember the rest of that phone call. Only fragments. Helicopters overhead. Police knocking on doors. News vans. Screams. And silence. The kind of silence that vibrates in your chest like a Helden scream. We never went back to that house. My parents sold it within 6 months. The new owners tore down the Linz's place. Nothing stands there now, just an overgrown lot and a warped mailbox. But sometimes, when I go home to visit, I look across the street and swear I still see something in that window. Some faint shape. Watching. I try not to think about the what-ifs. What if my mom had invited him over just one more time? What if he decided to start with our house instead? What if the switch in his mind had flipped just a little earlier? But the one that always gets me, the thought that haunts me most, is knowing that we all saw it. We all felt something was wrong, and none of us said a thing. I've never stopped wondering what could have happened if we had. If we'd been brave enough to admit that evil doesn't always knock. Sometimes it waits quietly. Just across the street.